There was college dorm, then it went mosque, then it went, when we moved to LA, it went to my apartment. No, sorry, when we moved to LA, we moved to LA, it went to a small WeWork in Hollywood, then it went to small WeWork in Santa Monica, then it went to my apartment, and then it went to Taco Shop. Tacos por favor in Venice. That shit slapped. We turned an apartment that was above it into an office. Easily the best time that we've had throughout this entire journey.
How many people were working there?
6. Me, James, Allison, Jake, Izzy, Becker. 6. And then McKenna came in at one point during that. But yeah, those were legendary days. Just fucking coffee, alcohol. And it felt like we were just like drunk. It was just fuel to keep going. And like we were all working out like crazy. We were all studying like crazy. We were all networking like crazy. We were all like building like crazy. And it was just 24/7 around the clock. It was nuts.
Is that when you all started seeing like your, like the actual avatars like get seen?
Yeah. That was like the first time when all of a sudden it was like anytime you opened up Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat, you were seeing a genie's avatar. And it was typically being used by like a celebrity that you were really into. Or not even really into, but like it was being used by culture in some way. So whether it was like kids that were leveraging it, or it was like a Rihanna or a Cardi or a Shawn Mendes or a Bieber or a fucking like, you know, what are the next up and comers or something like that. You were seeing people wearing the genie's jacket around town. Like Offset wore it, Jared Goff wore it to like every Jared's like a homie, but like you just have like people like rocking it like it was dope merch. Like they were wearing it to post game like interviews. There were people wearing it to I'm trying to think 50 Cent, fucking like just a wild array of people. CEO of Gucci, Marco Bizzari, just rocking like Genie's merch. Like yeah, like I'm part of like this like fucking like avatar movement and stuff. It was dope. And it's funny because like so many people that were like following the business thought that it was like this big ass business that was in LA that was like generating all these avatars as if it was like the gigafactory for fucking like avatars, something like that. And it was hilarious because we'd be like inviting all these people so proudly, being like, come to our office, like come see how the sausage is made or whatever, and they would pull up the tacos por favor. And it was actually hilarious because it's in the middle of Venice. And you have these like black Escalades that are like pulling up in front of Tacos Por Favor all the time. And these like fucking like big ass like celebrities or talent that are like coming in, they're like, am I at the right place? And we open up the small blue door on Hampton Street. But yeah, come on in. They just come on up through the stairs and we're always blasting music. And we didn't change the vibe for anybody. We always had this saying actually, if we had like a guest coming over or whatever, it'd be like, yo, get the vibes right. And if you said that, that means blast the music as loud as you fucking can. And if we typically had it like that no matter what when we were working, but we would pause it if we all had to like talk to each other. But like so much of our work was unsaid coordination and everybody knew exactly what they had to do. So we didn't change the vibes at all. Like whether it was like, you know, athletes or musicians or whatever that were coming by, or like a VC that wanted to see like what was going on. VC would walk through, man, this shit was fucking blaring. We weren't turning down the music down for anybody. Just sit down and be like, yeah, this is where we work. Backyard patio, this is where we eat our tacos. We changed this living room into what we call the stew. We call it the stew because it was like late night studio vibes. We just like light up a bunch of different candles. But it was just honestly me and James, just product guys, just like gunning it. And then Jake would sleep on the futon in the living room. He just came in from San Francisco. He'd sleep there from Monday through Friday. All the rats are running around because downstairs were tacos, so there's just like rats running around all the time. And Jake, honestly, like he's a pretty rugged dude. Like he can go through anything. Like he just hates hotels. It's actually hilarious. But he even tells me to this day, he's like, dude, that was pretty rough. Like sleeping with rats was like pretty tough for sure.
During that time, you guys are like about to run out of money. You guys have to make this work.
Yeah, like we I think 2017 was more that vibe. 2017 was like, hey, we just moved to LA, we're in this WeWork, we don't have any cash. I remember like sitting down like in the middle of the WeWork, calling one of our investors, being like, yo, is there any way that you would be willing to wire like another like 250K or something like that to float us for another like, I don't know, like 6-7 months. And I remember he was difficult to track down. Like he was definitely ignoring me. And I was like, I got to the point where it was like desperation almost. And he ended up saying like, no. But if you end up hitting like this and this goal, then like we can have another discussion. And so we blew those goals out of the water. But we didn't know that we were actually going to do that until we released and we launched. December 8th, 2017 is when everything changed. Everything changed December 8th, 2017. Between like 2014 and 2017, like the end of 2017, those were brutal years. It was like March of 2014 when we raised our seed round, and then December 8th, 2017 is when everything changed for us. But those years, almost like 4 years, were fucking hellish. Like they were really gnarly. It was filled with like crushed dreams and hopes, a shit ton of pivots, a lot of judgment from friends and family, identity crisis. Like I went from, remember I told you guys, like I was such like an extroverted, outgoing kid all the time. And then during this period was like my first time experiencing dramatic solitude and loneliness. It wasn't just from my friends, but it was from my family as well. And I was just figuring out my own shit. And I think it's also a really humbling experience when like, you know, like you feel like, you almost question yourself. You're like, am I supposed to do this? Like, am I like, is this actually like my groove? Am I?
Think about quitting?
No, weirdly enough, like that. Truthfully, no. I always had this like weird attitude about, not even attitude. I feel like anytime I would question myself was actually less about. Take that back. It was less about if I could figure out this problem. It was actually more of like, does this make me happy? And every single time I was like, yeah. Like, here are the things that I care about. I mean, here are the things that I care about the most. I'd say like creating really cool stuff, genies, family, and then football. Like those are like the things that I care about like the most. And when my family, Niners sucked back then too, so that was taking a hit for sure. But then when my family and I weren't as close, that was a little weird for me. So you're kind of questioning things. But again, like my sport, my recreational activity is just creative expression and like creative projects and like trying to, it's not even the act of getting the result for solving a problem. It's the process of solving the problem itself. She has me really fucking jacked. And so I never thought of quitting because I was like, this is just so fun to me. And I did question one time. I was like, I am addicted to all of this. And I was trying to figure out if it was like, I'm obsessed with all of this. And I was trying to figure out like, is this obsession by addiction or is this an obsession by love? And as I like went through and I peeled back all the layers, I was like, it's clearly by love. Even today, like I feel like over the last, since December 8th, 2017, I feel like my life has been like this. And it has nothing to do with success, but more in terms of like my own happiness. There's a period when it went like that for a second, but generally speaking on aggregate, it's been up and to the right. And I think so much of it has been like being able to open up as many avenues as possible for me to be able to have creative expression through building or creative expression through thinking a new way. Right? It's kind of what we talked about the other day. It's like most of the time, most people, especially at my age, right, like 30-ish, don't have the time in the day to think about weird shit. Like they just don't, or they don't create that space for themselves. And so like my goal in life has always been like, how can I achieve X, Y, and Z to be able to think about the what ifs of tomorrow, right? So anything that I'm executing right now is a what if that I thought about a year ago. And then that's affording me the space to be able to think about the what ifs of tomorrow. So that's my happy land, right? Always thinking about the what ifs. But anyways, I guess like getting into, let's see. So
Well, talk to us about 2020. You penned the paper. You penned an interview to Forbes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Was that? And so 2020 was after you guys are now set.
Mm-hmm.
You got a runway. There's no. You guys are rolling. Celebrities are posting. Feels like everything was going great, much better than the 6 years
For sure.
prior. So why did that hit you then? Do you think? Especially that all cylinders. You know what I mean? Like you were cruising. Your life is good.
It was funny. It was like right before the pandemic hit. I remember this happening. It was our first time ever scaling, like hiring people. I've never like hired anybody before, right? It's like Allison and James came from the campus influencer program. Jake dropped out with me. Becker ended up shooting a Boulder, Colorado video for us as part of like the campus influencing team. And then Izzy was brought on, supposed to be a contractor brief writer for some of our like scenes that we wanted to create as part of an Avatar news app. So like we never had ever hired before, but after we started getting a lot of success with the tastemakers and celebrity realm, we're like, okay, like now we want to start hiring, we want to start scaling, and we had raised that round, right? Like we raised like a $10 million round. And that was crazy amount of capital for us. Like again, like we had been so used to living like month by month and just trying to figure out how we can keep things going and keep the lights on, that by having 10 million, I remember thinking to myself, being like, bro, I'll literally start the next fucking Facebook with this amount of money, right? So we felt like really well capitalized. And because we have been burned so many times in the past from being short on cash, we're so intentional with the way that we spend. That's like the one positive in investing in like some 20 somethings is that like $100 to us is a lot of money, right? It's like that's 2 zeros. Like you sit there. I remember definitively having a conversation with Allison because we were ordering these blend and then Genie stickers. And the stickers, I remember looking at this price per sticker and I was like, dude, like this is like 90 something cents per sticker. I was like, this is like egregious. I was like, why? Like there's definitely gotta be a better sticker producer that can get it to us for like a third of the cost. So like anyways, like we were like very, very frugal. And I think in a positive, you wanna remain frugal by default, but then you also need to know like when to spend aggressively if you feel like there's like an opportunity. So we were actually getting to that point. We're like, okay, like, we solidified ourselves as like the avatar for culture. How do we separate ourselves from anybody else that's about to copy us? And so we're getting to the point where like, okay, let's start scaling resources, like bring on some professionals from art, from animation, and also from avatar technology, avatar R&D. And as we started to grow our team, we moved from the taco shop to just like 3 blocks down the street to 550 Rose. It's still in Venice. And it was just, it's like nice, like I don't know why I'm even drawing it out. It's like a deep like compound. Would definitely like easily host like around like 30 people at max capacity, and we ended up going from like 6 to like 20 something. And you know, it's like now I'm starting to get up in front of like 20 something people. Some people are like really experienced and stuff like that. I'm like telling everybody, hey, this is where we want to go. This is why we want to go in this direction, and this is like what your role is going to be. And as a kid, you know, so many things come automatic to you. One of the things that came automatic to me as a kid was speaking in front of big audiences, and I think like unique and creative expression. Unique and creative expression continued to expand further and further. Like the more that we grow, the more that I feel like I'm getting even more comfortable in this axis of thought. But I remember definitively this one week, I was getting up in front of like, it was all hands. I just held it every single Monday. I would get up and I'd like basically say like, here's total company health. Here's where we're doing well. Here's where we're not doing well. And here's like your role in all of this. And I remember my throat was like itching. It was like right here. There was like something in my throat. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I ended up just being like, hey, I gotta go. Like, I think I'm sick. So I went to the doctor's office and I was like, hey, like it's so weird. Like, this whole week for some reason, I was describing all my symptoms. I was like, yeah, like, you know, I can't even do meetings. Like when I'm doing these meetings, all of a sudden I have something that's like right here. And it's like, so I think I have like a throat problem. Can you do like a throat test on me? And she was like, yeah, I'm happy to do a test, but has anybody ever tested you for anxiety? And I was like, what? I was like, dude, no, I don't have anxiety. Like I probably have strep throat, like something like that. Like, can you like please do the test? She's like, okay, yeah, no problem. Like anyways, like, you know, like, and then she started to like, she saw that I reacted negatively to it, and she was like, okay, like, if you want to test it, if you want to like go and like educate yourself more around like some of these mental health things, blah, blah, whatever, like it's helped me a ton. She was like trying to relate, whatever. And like, you know, I just kind of like shoved it to the side, put it in the back of my mind, and then I left the doctor's office, and I literally left with cough syrup, and I was taking cough syrup for like a week. And then 2020 hit. 2020 hit, nobody's allowed at the office, right? And I was going through a period where like, yeah, the company had raised money, and it was so funny. Like so many of my friends thought that like the company raising money directly correlated to like my personal bank account. I was like, guys, like I didn't make 10 million bucks. Like the company has 10 million to spend on Xbox. I'm still very well broke. And it was at a point where like, I remember this, like I had my Chase my Chase account, my Sapphire account, I could only spend 25,000, or my limit I think was 25,000 a month, and I'd racked up enough like bills and shit like that. That I would only pay off like maybe around 3,000 to 5,000 a month. So it would just be hovering at like 20K, and I would just keep this little delta going on every single month by month. And I was just like, okay, I gotta pay off like one. I was getting rejected. My card was easily getting rejected once or twice a month, like easily. And it's not like I was like spending like crazy amount. It was just like spending on food. A lot of the time, if I felt guilty for the company spending on something that I knew would add value, but I couldn't like tangibly talk about how it could, I would just do it on my own card, like shit like that. Like honestly, like a good example is not the Niners game that we just went to. That was on me. Like that was on Akash personal time, personal suite, whatever. And I'm like, I know this adds value to the culture, but I just don't want to like go to the board of it. By the way, I spent $30,000 of company funds on like a fucking Niner game because you guys obviously know I love the Niners. I'm like, yeah, that's on me personally. I'm like willing to take that. So anyways, I was doing shit like that on a much lower level back then. And it got to the point where I was like, I really want to save money. Nobody's let to go to the office. I had an apartment in Santa Monica, and they were hiking up the rent. And it was going from, I believe it was like $2,100 to like, they're going to like $2,350 a month or something crazy like that. And I was just like, dude, the fuck this. Like, this is like crazy. Like, I already don't want to be spending $2,000 a month on rent. So I ended up cutting out of the lease, and I moved my bed to the third floor of the office in 550 Rose because nobody could go there anymore. And I just separated all the desks at the top, and I put my bed right down the middle, and I used all of those desks as like my like, here's where I'm putting my like water cup, and here's where I'm putting all my chargers and shit like that. And the top had a shower too, so I was just like showering in there. And for over a year, I just lived there. But during 2020 is when that same throat feeling that I had during that meeting really manifested itself. Meaning like anytime I would get on a Zoom, I was like, dude, why the fuck am I getting nervous to talk to Jake? Or why am I getting, and I never experienced nerves before. I had never experienced anxiety before. And I was like, again, that shit was automatic. Not even just automatic, that was my strength growing up. And I just felt so weird and lost, and I started going into a depression because I was just like, I can't, I almost felt like those two things are the things that I add value with the most. One, I feel like I can get alignment, and I feel like I'm an effective communicator. And then two, I feel like I can be a unique and creative thinker. And I'm like, dude, if you take this one away from me, then like, what, I'm only offering this, is that enough? And I'm like, fuck, like, am I gonna get like churned out of here, like whatever? And so like, I was insanely insecure at that point. I was like, damn, like I feel like I'm losing my special sauce. So I ended up getting a therapist. I found a therapist, and I was meeting with the therapist almost every other day for like 3 months straight, and really unleashing and saying everything that was on my mind. And he was like, dude, you 100% one, first of all, have anxiety. Your throat's fine, but you have anxiety. It's called a lump, and you're getting nervous. And then two, a lump. Like you have like a lump. Like when you're like, I don't know if you've ever gotten nervous, but like sometimes if you get on stage and you're like, oh shit, like all of a sudden you guys are fucking content creators, so obviously you guys don't get this, but like sometimes like your throat starts closing, and it's a psychological effect, right? You think that you're choking, but you're not, and your throat starts to close, and then you start to sweat, and then you start to like, and then you get in your head and you're like, and then you start like shaking and shit. It never really got to that point with me. In my head it did, but other people were like, dude, you sounded totally fine, like whatever. But I could sense it wasn't natural. I could sense I wasn't like loose, and I wasn't just like having a convo, which is, again, like that's how I used to be and how I like expect myself to be. So it was a fucking lump. And so we started going through like so many different exercises or whatever, and we started to uncover like, a lot of like my childhood trauma has compounded over time. And it's manifested itself as anxiety and depression. And I felt it the most in 2020 for a couple of reasons. One, I wasn't able to interact with humans anymore, right? So I couldn't see anybody, and I was living in the office. So my routine back then was, and I have photos of all of this stuff. I was sleeping in the top third floor. This is right when things are scaling like crazy, right? 2019, we're coming off a big year. 2020, everybody's like, shit, we're gonna exist like even more digitally than ever before. We need these avatars. Not like we want them. We actually need them in order to exist as a business. Things are scaling like crazy. Yes, we had some money, but not like it wasn't like a ton. It wasn't enough for us to be as aggressive, right? It was enough for us to exist, so I wasn't thinking about, like, is the company gonna go under anymore? But I was thinking, like, shit, are we gonna be able to define this separation? Because we know that Facebook is coming. We know that everybody's coming. So it's like we have this like position in the race. Like, how do we maintain that and separate ourselves? And so what ended up happening was I just went into complete overdrive mode. So I was sleeping on the 3rd floor. We would wake up in the morning. I had already ordered like a Postmater to drop off a Rain energy drink, 300 milligrams. I'd run to the front. Orange Dreamsicle was the flavor. And I just the Postmater wasn't there. It just dropped off in a small little brown bag. I opened it up. This is probably around like 6 a.m. every single day. And I just cracked that open, just nail it. I would then go to one of the conference rooms, and I didn't like sitting in a chair, and I was always really cold. And I had this psychological thing that my anxiety was decreased if my feet were warm. I have this thing, I like, if my feet are warm, then I'm good. So I got a space heater. I sat crisscross applesauce on the floor. There's like a small table in front of me. I opened up my laptop and I blasted the heating at my feet, and then I would just start ripping calls and just going. I would start at 6 a.m. I would then do my own work. Then I would do Jeannie's like America work. But then things were scaling like crazy in Asia. So then I would stay up for Asia hours. I would go all the way till around 2 a.m. I would just do all of those calls. I'd then shut my laptop. I'd run back upstairs. I'd go sleep in that bed. Wake up again at 6 a.m. Run back outside. Grab the Rain energy drink. Go back into that room. Crisscross applesauce. Space heater. Open up the laptop and repeat. My girlfriend at the time was like, "This is not good." and yeah, we broke up shortly after, but it was a crazy time. And all my friends, I mean, like all the guys here were just like, "Dude, like this is psycho mode, like you gotta relax." And the therapist was like, "You gotta fucking chill." And after doing enough therapy sessions and after doing so much self-reflection and doing so much introspection, right? And there was many ways in which I was like discovering here's what I will say is that I love my alone time because it allows your mind to wander. So if I'm like with somebody, I'm engaging in a conversation, I'm more focused on our conversation than my own thoughts, right? So you and I are going back and forth, like, hey, what you have for coffee or what you have for like lunch today? Oh, I had a burrito. Oh, what did you have? And whatever. And you're focused on going back and forth with this person. If you're forced to sit alone, then you have thoughts, and then your thoughts can wander, and those thoughts turn into ideas or opinions and so forth, right? And so during 2020, I had a lot of alone time. So you had a lot of thinking, and then you had a lot of reflecting, and then you could translate those thoughts into actual action for yourself and then for the business. So one of the things that I realized, I was like, damn, I've had like the best time of my entire life, but there's realities that I haven't confronted. One, dropping out of school was easily the most traumatic, probably top 3 most traumatic things to this day that have happened to me, but at that time, easily number 1. Right? And there were like things that I just like kind of like put underneath the rug. One, conversation with my family around like what had happened and all the judgment, not even just from them, but really from like the community that transpired. One, my friends at Michigan. 2, like even just like friends that were with me in San Francisco. Like just like so much shit that like for a person that used to be so social, for me to go through that moment and then not really confront it, keep focusing on blend, then blend V6, and then go into GDs and not really like actually sit with that feeling was kind of crazy. So I sat with it. The therapy session was like, or the therapy sessions rather, best decision I've ever made. And so I ended up coming out with an article, or like even like a public view of who I was, not so much in the way that people understood me, at least on like Instagram at the time, but it was very much like, or like somebody that was just at the hype of like everything that was happening, and we just raised a Series B, and we bring on all these like cool people, and like business is scaling. It was like at the peak of all of this success, boom, I come out and it's like, yo, Akash suffers from anxiety and depression. And that was not my MO at all, right? And so it was done at a time, again, when not a lot of people were doing it. And when I mean not a lot of people, I didn't know anybody, at least in my space or my industry, that was like talking that way. And it was risky in many ways because part of me thought that maybe the Series B deal would fall through because they would view this CEOs maybe not having enough thick skin to be able to handle all of the shit that comes with this. part of me thought that employees at the business would think the same thing. But I was kind of at the point where I'm so used to just doing it my way and just doing it in my style. And people are either gonna fuck with that style and they want to be part of like this journey, or they're gonna do their own thing. That's totally fine. I had done enough self-work. I mean, this is after months and months and months of self-work, like really taking it seriously. Not just like, oh yeah, I did my therapy session, I'm good for the day, and now I'm moving on. It's like, no, like really fucking thinking through this stuff. So, came out with that, and the response was awesome in the sense that I feel like most people go, and now we know this, right? Like it's been many years later, but back then again, like it just wasn't discussed as much. Many people go through anxiety, many people go through depression, many people have like these same thoughts. And I feel like the more open you can be with people about it, the more authentic those connections become, the more real they become, and then here's what I'll say, is that the more vulnerable you can be with somebody, the more authentic that relationship becomes. The more authentic results in a more happy and joyous, I think, relationship as well, right? And so like, I think most people can only point to like maybe max like 3 really fucking close die-hard people that they ride with, that they can be 100% transparent with. And if we can push that number higher, or just like, whether it's pushing it higher or be accepting of just the fact that you can do it with one, I think the better off people will become. So anyways, 2020 was a wicked year for that reason. 2021 was like kind of a blur. It was like us coming out of, I think, like the pandemic and stuff, but Genie's just still scaling like fucking crazy. And it was still like mad mania, right? It was like scaling a lot, hiring for the first time, bringing on the right people, trying to figure out, I think, like, what was like the best approach to our vision, right? It was like there's so many different ways you could have tugged it. It was like the hype of like the NFT craze and stuff too. So everybody's just like freaking out about NFTs. And the NFT craze was interesting because it definitely bucketed us into, in my opinion, like the wrong category of business. I remember at the peak of it saying, we are not a metaverse company. At the peak of it saying, we are not an NFT company. I said that so many times. There's so many quotes in like Wall Street Journal, CNBC, we are not this, we are an avatars company, we are a communications company. But we still got, I mean, like at the end of the day, like we still got bucketed in all of it, because the way that people thought about the word metaverse is that it would correlate it to Facebook Horizons. And when you think about Facebook Horizons, they come out with avatars. People aren't thinking about avatars the way that we are. They hear avatars for Facebook. They say, oh, Genie's has avatars too, right? Even if the utility is dramatically different, the way we think about leveraging an avatar is dramatically different. You still get bucketed. And so it was just like a really interesting time of like battling, I think, brand association, battling, I think, pressures around the NFT hype in general. Hey, Akash, like you guys should, oh my God, you guys could totally make so much money doing it like this. Akash, you guys should like partner with these guys and like, you know, build it on this blockchain and shit like that, right? And we just, what I am proud to say is that we never succumbed to those pressures, right? You never saw us do a $100 million NFT drop with all the IP that we had and all the art resources we had. You never saw us say, you know what, forget Gen Z, forget culture, let's 100% only focus on this crypto community that's really enthusiastic about what we're doing. It was always like, guys, it was like a measured, it was always like a measured conversation. Guys, this is interesting stuff that's happening. There's clear utility for the future in places where we see avatars evolving in an avatar social network. Right now, some of this stuff feels really forced. Gen Z will never care, like does not care about this. Culture right now does not care about this. We cannot, the association with NFTs is actually hurting our long-term potential. We need to really, really think about how we can separate ourselves from all the other chaos and noise that's happening. So we spent 2021 doing that, and again, we were still growing really well. And then we ended up getting into a situation where we didn't have to raise any money, but there were a lot of people that were approaching us. And I remember building a really strong relationship with Egon, who's the CEO of Silver Lake, probably like late of 2021. And I got in 2022, and we got it to the place where like he heard and like would spend the time to actually listen to the long-term vision of Genies. It wasn't anything to do with the NFT hype, had nothing to do with like kind of like the metaverse hype. It's very much around like, okay, like talk to me about like why people should care about an avatar the way that they cared about a username in Web 1. Talk to me about why they should care about an avatar the same way that people care about their Instagram profile today. Like talk to me about that journey. And I was telling him, I was like very honest. I was like, here are the things that we figured out today. Here are the things that we will figure out tomorrow. These are the problems that fascinate us. Here's why we're best positioned to solve those problems. I can't guarantee you we're gonna solve them, but out of everybody out there, we're the best positioned to figure that out because of our domain expertise, because of our obsession, because of our academia background in this category, and because of all the traction that we already have, all the resources and the people that have been savants in this space for a long time that have decided to quit some of these amazing other companies and come join this mission. And I went through like a 10-year plan and he loved it. And he invited me to come to, this day I'll never forget. He invited me to come to Silver Lake to pitch basically the partnership in the Bay.
How was that?
What?
How was that?
Insane, because I remember telling everybody here, I was like, I want this to be a $1 billion company before the age of 30. And what's insane is that he scheduled the meeting on February 28th, which was a day before my birthday, March 1st. And he scheduled that partnership meeting, and we're just like, dude, this is kind of crazy. And like, you guys obviously know the background with like Silver Lake. So it's like, not only was like their name very meaningful to like our core demo, but then even the fact that it was just lining up this way, like, dude, it has to happen. But, you know, like I was still at that time, I've gotten way better over this last year, but I was still suffering from performance anxiety. So for me, I was like, dude, if you want to talk about high stakes, this is like high stakes. It's like, okay, it's like one meeting for this like type of opportunity and resources that has put us in the position that we're in today, where it's like, you're not thinking about like a small problem to solve. Now we're really thinking about the whole entire world, right? It's like, before it was like, let's crack the code for celebrities and prove that people actually like avatars. Then it was like, okay, do consumers actually think about, consumers outside of hardcore gamers, are they interested in avatars? Now it's like, dude, can you be the next method of communication? Can you be the next username? Like, that's a really massive problem to solve, but we've been afforded the resources and the trust from everybody to do that. But that day was like intense. And I remember like, you know, in addition to the therapy, I engaged in so much meditation. I ended up bringing on a meditation practitioner. She was helping me go through the most. She came over every single day, and we were really trying to master that form. If there was one thing I asked for, I asked for advice from all these different executives that I've respected along the way, and we were clearly at a very important inflection point. And I asked them, I was like, hey, like, what do you recommend I like really pick up and I learn during this time? Or like, how did you level up during this time? It's the only time in my entire career where the unanimous feedback across the entire board was the same. And it was, you have to master meditation. And it sounds cliche, but like, again, like I've done this like a few times where I'm like, hey, what's your advice? And typically you have people conflicting. Like, it's like, oh, one person says this, another person says this, or whatever. This is the one time where everybody's like, meditation, 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 meditation. And it came from all different types of people. It was people that were in their 60s that came from entertainment and old school business. There were people that came from consumer, but they were a little bit younger. They were from LA. You had somebody that was like a little bit like, you know, they're into like different stuff or like whatever. Like some people are like into like more of themselves as a brand or whatever. Then it's like still meditation. So I took that super seriously and that helped. I was like meditating that morning. I went back home in the Bay where my parents live, and the meeting was at like 1 o'clock. And I remember just like thinking to myself, like any time that I'm in like a high stakes situation, that's when you see I've typically found the most success when I embrace myself the most. So it's like, that's when it's like a really good reminder to like not conform to what you think somebody may want of you, but just be really truly exactly who you are times 10. So I remember showing up in like the biggest hoodie. I showed up in sweatpants, my snowshoes on, like Timbos, like just really decked out, like this like like bummy, like super bummy. And I feel comfortable that way because again, my feet are warm, right? So I'm like, dude, like I feel best when my feet are warm. Great, I'm wearing snowshoes. It was like literally February 28th in the Bay Area. It's like 70 degrees. I'm wearing snowshoes. My feet are warm. I feel comfortable. Wore that. I wore like just really, really, just like Akash, like really comfy ass shit. Like what I feel good. I'm wearing the things that allow me to think the best. So why would I try to like put on any other mask? So I show up there, and I remember like some of the partners looking at me and being like, who the fuck is this guy? And I was like, yeah, what's up? No deck, but I was locked in there for hours. And it was just like, boom, like question after question after question. And I was just ripping back and forth with them. So much of it was just long-term stuff, right? I remember even going to the bathroom in the middle, and I went to the mirror, and I just flipped off the mirror, took a photo, and I sent it to the original 6 guys to the group chat in the middle of the meeting. They're like, what are you doing? They're like, what are you doing? I was like, let's go, baby. Just absolute like psycho mode. It's the same thing, like feeling oddly good and dangerous when I send those videos to those guys right before I'm going into something. I'm getting into like my psychotic mode. And then I go back in there and I just start ripping again for more and more time. And I didn't know how it was going. I was just like, it's easy for me to talk about, again, things that I love. So I'm like going deep into like our 20% process of thinking. Very detailed oriented, right? There wasn't a single, I mean, all of them are softball questions, but I would take it even a step further and be like, okay, but like, this is the answer, but like, you didn't ask this question, but here are 3 questions you should have asked where things could go wrong. Here's what we're thinking right now. We don't have the full answer. And then I remember at one point, like at one point I could sense that people were like, this is actually pretty sick. This might be a bet we're taking. It's crazy. It's super long-term. It's wild, but if it hits, it's gonna hit in a huge way. You see them kind of like warming up a little bit. And that's when I wanted to make sure there was a reality check. And I was like, by the way, guys, like I believe that there's like a 10% shot that this works. And you saw all of their smiles go from like smiles to like kind of like concern. They're like, well, wait a minute, like why are you like pitching against yourself? And I was like, look, like in order for us to do our work, we need to feel more like artists. And that means like we need to feel like creative freedom. And if there's these unfair expectations or misaligned expectations out of the gates, you're gonna make the artist feel very, very like shuttered in a closet, right? And all of a sudden, that's not gonna be beautiful. So you're not gonna, you will play with our product and it will feel like it was built by a bunch of anxious kids, like I guarantee you. So in order to avoid that, give us the freedom and the trust to go about our own process in our own way. But in order for us to do that, we need to have aligned expectations up front. 10%, in our opinion, is really good. When we first started this in 2014, it was 0.001%. So we've made a lot of progress. That's great. We've like, I don't even know how many X's. We've like 10,000 X-star odds over time. But statistically, you're probably losing your money. So if you really care about this money you're gonna invest in it and like the firm is dependent upon it, if I were in your position, I probably wouldn't invest. If this is a flyer and you guys are like, hey, listen, like this is like something interesting, and if it does hit, that's like awesome, but if it doesn't, no problem, great, then I would invest. And that's kind of where I left it. And we've increased those odds ever since, but I'll still tell you, like, I mean, you can ask people here. I say it all the time. I'm like, internally, I probably said it as recently as 2 weeks ago in like an executive meeting. I'm like, yeah, like more than likely, like this probably isn't gonna be anything. But if it is, like, this is what it could look like. And everybody's like, oh my God, this is fucking cool. Like, let's blah, 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 whatever. And there's like a way to mitigate risk. And you have to figure out like what success is to you and so forth. But at least like when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about the long-term vision. So anyways, I ended up leaving the office and it was after like, I don't know, X amount of hours. And I was like, okay, toss up. I don't really know what happened, but toss up. And yeah, I was pumped that it was done and that I did it our way. I don't even say my way anymore. I say our way because I feel like this whole company has all contributed into like such a cool, unique culture and like a way of thinking. But I'm glad that we did it our way, and that if they wanted to come on board, they would come on board in our fashion. They wouldn't come on board being like, okay, well now we're gonna coach up these kids and we're gonna make sure that they're like a company now and blah, blah, blah. They're like, no. Like we're backing these artists or we're backing these like kind of crazy kids that have like a wild idea. And I got into the car and on my way back home, I got a call. So the house is only like 20 minutes away, but I get a call being like, yo, like it was like from one of the referral investors being like, dude, like they just texted us. They're like, yo, great meeting. It's amazing. Like we're going to be reaching out soon for details. And I was like, what? So I didn't even go all the way back home. I was just like so tired. I was just like, okay, let me just like I went to Stanford Mall and I went there to go eat. And I remember just like sitting there and I was just like breathing. It was like crisp air. I was just like, feels good. I'm done. I'm feeling awesome. And then I get a call and it's from a partner and they patched in one of the referral investors. They're like, hey, listen, so like, awesome, we're in. We're really excited about this, we're in. But we have one problem. And I remember going in there being like, yo, we're raising $100 million. Like if we were to take on a round, it'd be $100 million. And you know, we'd like want you guys to put in 50 because I'm sure there's gonna be like a bunch of people that want to come in. They're like, yeah, like we have to take the full 100. That's the only problem. We have to take the full 100. And we're sitting there and be like, well, you know, like, well, we want to let in other people. No, like it's not even worth our time if we can't like take like the full 100. And I thought that was pretty awesome, like the amount of conviction they had and like what we were doing. And I thought what was even better was the fact that they're like, and we know this is a long-term bet. Like we want you guys to go about your way. We have trust in you guys that it's not like we're sitting over here twiddling our thumbs and we're just kind of like fucking around. Oh my God, we're so excited that we raised this round or whatever. Like at the end of the day, I mean, the first thing I said to the company when I announced it here was, this valuation, this number, it's all vapid. Don't even think about that number. Think about the fact that we now have the resources to be able to do shit to the extent that we've always dreamt of. That's the way to think about it. But don't even let this fucking number get to your head. And so, anyways, we ended up giving them the full 100. We ended up raising 150. We brought in a bunch of other people and stuff. And that's when we went into farewell mode, right? And that's when it was like, great, we're not talking to anybody outside for a year. We're not talking to any press for a year. All we have is in between these four walls. So let's just get to work. And it was honestly like, I think my second favorite year was probably at least these last like 8 months or so, maybe even this year, honestly, because we've just been able to grind and deliver and like ship product. And I feel like everybody around the table is super happy around us. Oh, we didn't talk about Bob. Probably should talk about Bob too at one point. I can do that now if you want.
Mary Meeker?
Mary came in on the Series B.
They came in, how that happened, all that.
Yeah, I can do that. So Bob's a pretty funny story because it was back in 2021 when I was still living in the office and I was coming down and sitting crisscross applesauce in front of that small little table. And those were the days where it was like so intense and we're so under-resourced that it was like, remember it was like coming in, 6 a.m. you start, 2 a.m. you end, packing your schedule and you're just repeating, rinse and repeat. And so I didn't have a lot of time and I didn't want to be taking that many external meetings unless it was like really adding value. And McKenna, who's my chief of staff, she's typically looking at, I mean, she looks at all the emails that are coming in, email interest or whatever. And I'm always on a call, typically when like an email is coming through, right? And Mary Meeker had just invested and she was like, hey, like who do you think like would be really awesome to bring to the company and blah, blah, and we're talking, whatever. And she's like, you know who's gonna love this? It's like, you know, who'd really love this? And it was like Juliet from Bond as well. Bob Iger would like love this. And like, they really got to know us at this point. Like they were like seeing the way that we thought about stuff. I was calling ourselves Disney in so many different ways. I was like, it's like kind of like your unpersonalized Disney and like whatever. Like Bob would really like this. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great, whatever. And then I forget about the conversation. They were like, yeah, we're gonna introduce you at one point. I was like, okay, cool, sounds good. A few weeks passed, and I guess like, you know, as I was on calls in those like crazy, during those like really crazy days, an email came through. And it was like, hey, like really excited to introduce you guys, blah, blah, blah. We'll let you guys take it from here. And they CC'd McKenna. And I was on call, so I didn't even see this thread. And McKenna and I basically have a rule during that time where it's like, okay, like for anybody that adds direct value, then maybe we'll consider leaving like our area to go to them. But things are so crazy that typically like they have to come to us. And we rarely will like let any external meeting show themselves on the calendar unless it's like high value add. And if she doesn't know the person, then she's gonna go Google that person's name to figure out like, oh, is this person of high notoriety, or does this person think that they could like, they have the background to add value, and then we have a conversation before she says like, you know, like whatever, before she like schedules them. So when they introduced Bob the first time, Bob's name or his email is an alias. And so she saw that name come up. I'm on calls. And she ends up responding and going back and forth. I get off a call and I open up my email. I have context of what has happened already. So I see the email and I see it come in from Bond. And I'm like, oh, awesome, great. Oh, sweet. We just got introduced to Bob. Oh, that's funny. That's a weird alias, but whatever. And then I see that there's been 6 messages back and forth since. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I look and literally it's like Bob being like, oh, can't wait to meet Akash. Like, this is going to be great or something. McKenna responds. And this is like, I don't know, maybe like sometime in July. And she goes, hey, X, Y, and Z alias, great to meet you. Unfortunately, Akash is slammed for the next 45 days. So the next time that he can meet you is gonna be August 27th, and you can come to Venice if you wanna meet him. In my heart, I dropped. I was like, dude. I was like, no, please no, please no. And then I go to the next message, and it's Bob, and he responds like, great, see you then. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. And so when I met Bob, it was actually at Justa here in Venice, which is right down from 550 Rose. The first thing I said was, dude, I'm so sorry. And he was just like, this better be good. Like, this better be sick. And we ended up actually hitting it off. After that, we started talking every single day. And it was always product. It was never really like, so many people ask me, it was like, was there a lot of like business mentorship? Was there a lot of like executive mentorship? And it was actually like, I think it was like maybe subconscious if anything, but it was so much just product. Like we would just go back and forth product session. And then we just became friends, honestly. Like we would just talk on the weekends and stuff like that. And, you know, like I applaud him because he's so curious at that stage in his career, at that stage in life about still what the kids want, which is like, in direct alignment with how we think about everything that we do. Whether it's genies or humans or all my other personal ambitions, it's always around what does culture want, what do the kids want next, right? So we got along a lot in that way. And then at one point I remember there was a conversation and it was kind of like, hey, listen, like should Bob join the board? And it was coming from him, it was coming from Bond. And I remember sitting there being like, you know, I just gotten to know him. Probably after like a month we were having that conversation. I remember saying, in a way that was more like, made it feel like a group decision, but we were the one that led it where it was like, no, let's not do this right now. And the reason why was because I was like, I still don't know Bob well enough to bring him into the business in this capacity. And I was like, look, just because he's an awesome name, just because he has an awesome background, for all I know, this guy doesn't actually think as in depth about product as we do. For all I know, this guy's a complete dick at the board level and can make things really messy unnecessarily. We had just added Mary Meeker to the board, right? So all of a sudden it's like, it's already enough to just manage like one new personality at the board dynamic, but then all of a sudden you add 2 and then like 2 big power players, like how is that gonna affect things? And I'm sitting there being like, guys, like we have kind of what we need right now to execute what we want. I wanna allocate as much time as possible to just simply executing product. And thinking about product and thinking about, I don't know, just like philosophically still, like I think like the one thing that we want to make sure that we never lose is, and it's one of our strengths, is our attention to, it's really like creating the space to think about the what ifs, which means creating the time to become an academic in this space. And that requires a lot of time and it requires a lot of obsession. And like the more that you spend like doing other things that make you kind of like short-term feel good, it takes away from like kind of like your long-term approach. So we ended up, I basically went to Bob and I was like, Bob, look, here's the deal. I was like, we can do this right now, but if we do this right now, you might find out that this isn't like the best fit for you and like vice versa and so forth. So what if we do this instead? Over the next 6 months, let's get to know each other super well. Let's spend a lot of time together. You get inside my brain, I get inside your brain. You start to see the business. I start to like give you board notes after the board meeting so that you can review them yourself and so forth. And then at the end of the 6 months, you're either gonna feel one of 2 things. 1, wow, I fell in love with genies the more and more I started to learn about it. Or 2, I hate Akash, he's dumb and I hate genies, right? It's kind of gonna be like one of those 2 things. And I ended up being more of the former, which is good. And we felt the same way, right? We're like, no, this is a guy that can add a lot of value. This is somebody that really, truly understands our vision through and through. And he has a lot of belief around it. Added him to the board. And, you know, that lasted a year until he had to go back to Disney, of course. but he ended up investing a ton of his own personal money into it. So he remains close to the business today, and is a firm believer. I mean, like we talk all the time. He pays very, very close attention to what we're doing, and I feel like there's an opportunity. We both talked about how Disney and genies can work with each other. But yeah, I mean that's the story of Bob.
You know what, your thoughtfulness probably like, you probably found that really like attractive, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure he's used to people like, clear my schedule, you're coming right now, I'll do anything it takes to get you in the office. Like, there's a chance you join the board, yes, like not even thinking about it, like it's fucking
When McKenna met him for the first time, McKenna was like, hey, so I'm McKenna. It's like, sorry about that. But Bob,
I bet you appreciated it.
Bob loves McKenna. Yeah, I mean, we got like really, I mean, Bob's come over for dinner a few times. Like, I went over his place. Like, it's like I think he's, you know, how do I say this? I think he's very appreciative of like somebody that's doing things like their own way. So I think that's what he found very attractive with this place. And again, I keep going back to Mary, Bob, and Egon. If you go to all three of them and you ask this question, they're probably going to come back with pure. I know Egon says this very consistently, and I remember like when they did like an internal memo to like their whole firm about why they wanted to invest in genies, they called it an ode to genies, and I'm almost positive the word pure came up there too. I'm sure if you ask Bob, he'll say something very similar along those lines as well. Amazing. That's Bob.
Amazing.
What else? What else should I go through?
As far as like the background, I mean, if you could touch real quick on like the moment that round officially closed, and like, I mean, I guess it was
The series C.
Series C.
Yeah, we ended up. It was funny because again, it was like right before. It was right before my birthday. It was the day before my birthday, and yeah, man, that shit was nuts. Because what was cool about it is that I did a surprise all hands here. Well, I made.
Officially closed on 29.
Am I up? Oh, really?
Oh, shit.
You really sweat, and then you're back with that in 30 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Just a little break.
I'll do this one last thing and then I'll be there. Where do I meet her?
I'll find a place.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Your phone's right here, too.
Oh, that's where. Why is my phone out there? Wait, that's so random. Whoa. Yeah. So when we closed the Series C, it was the day before my birthday, and I remember like we had an all hands that was coming up, and if you recall, like that's not when people were like meeting in person. So we had just got in this office. We got a sick COVID deal on this because nobody was getting like offices, and we got it for like 50% of like what it would normally go for. We're still built into that legacy today that I'm super proud of, obviously. But we flew everybody in for an all hands up there at the theater. And it was the first time many people were like seeing each other for the first time, like meeting and all this stuff. And like I did a 2-hour all hands where I was going deep into product, deep into strategy. We actually have the recording of it. So if you guys ever want to see it, yeah, we have the recording of every single speaker series, every single all hands. But I got to the moment where it was like, you know, we've had like a bunch of different a bunch of different wins over the past like 6 months. This. And then I was like, and I have one more surprise for you. And then I went to the next slide. I was like, surprise announcement. And I was like, and we raised this from this person, whatever. We raised like a $150 million Series C at $1 billion valuation from silver, like whatever. And people went nuts. And then we had a party that week and stuff. And like, I think it was like really special. And again, I keep going back to the fact that like the valuation to me is vapid in the sense that it doesn't mean that like, great guys, our job here is done, and like calculate your net worth and sell your shares and you're good. It's more of like a signal of trust in the space and belief in the space, which I think is cool. Less about the number, but more about the milestone that we hit that level of trust. And so yeah, that was a really fucking special week because people, I think, were celebrating so many years of hard work. And there's some people here that, again, like, sacrificed their lives to be here, right? Like Becker, Allison, James, and then like there's like a bit of a new crop of people. So like Claire, for example, Raghu, Skiba, like there's like so many different cohorts of people that have joined the business. Dude, there's like Bo's 24 or something. He joined the business right out of college at 20. He joined when I was living in that office. So like he's seen this place like evolve like crazy too. Jeff, an animator, he was like the very first hire that we ever made. He came to the taco shop he came right out of college and he was our very first hire. I remember we tried hiring, it was our very first time that we were hiring people. We hired 2 people individually and we were bringing on animators. We're like, oh my God, we're so excited to bring them on. It's like we gave them both offers. We had run like a very extensive process over like 50 different candidates that we wanted to bring on board. We hired 2 people. And they're like, oh, let's go check out their Instagrams. We had already given them the offers. They both accepted. And we're like going through like Jeff's Instagram. We're like, this is so cool. And then we're like, oh, are Jeff and this other person friends or something? And they're like, yeah, like, I guess they're in an Instagram photo together. And then we like scroll a little bit further and then they're like kissing. We're like, wait a minute. And we ended up hiring a boyfriend and a girlfriend without fucking knowing it. And they joined the business. But yeah, anyways, Jeff has been here for a long time. So yeah, that week was crazy. All right, I'm going to go do this meeting and I'll be right back.
One more thing.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could say something like, so I did, like, I built $1 billion company before the time I turned 30. Because you mentioned that was your goal.
Yeah.
Or do you think that's too...
It might be. I mean, like, look, I'm willing to do whatever you guys want. I have a feeling when that type of shit comes out, like, at least for me personally.
Yeah, leave it out.
For me personally, like, I'm gonna be pretty skittish of doing things that are a little too, like, businessy.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, or acting.
Only
Like,
because you had mentioned it, so
I did mention it. And
no,
I did mention it.
Scrap it.
I'm gonna try to think like how I could say that in a better way. It's like, you know, it's like I think it was one of those goals that was almost just like for people that knew what $1 billion meant to us. What I'm afraid of doing is that if I put something like that out there, they're gonna sit there and be like, oh, he really cares about the valuation.
Right.
Whereas like,
He thinks this is the finish line.
yeah, whereas like it's actually like the $1 billion valuation only had significance to my circle here because they knew how I thought about that milestone of that number. I'm happy to do it though if you want, just to have it. Okay. All right, I'll be right back. Yeah. So, I guess like what is the vision, right?
What is the vision when it came to you, and why you're working so hard towards it? Why it matters so much to you?
Like I want to know, like you know, like when somebody goes on a mission, they
It's personal.
all of a sudden they discover something that they weren't looking for.
Mhm.
Did that happen to you, or was it like?
I think like hindsight's 2020, right? So like, here's what I will say is that I'm an extremely philosophical person. So if you ask anybody here at the business, it's almost like, how does Akash start meetings? I always start the meetings with why. And the reason being is because I don't react well if somebody tells me something to do and they don't tell me the why behind it. So like, for example, like my meditation practitioner, if she tells me like, Akash, I need you sitting like this, and then I need you like sitting in the silence and thinking about X, Y, and Z, my first question is why. And that why needs to be packed with substance that makes sense to me, and then I'm okay to follow that action. And I feel like anytime that you ask somebody, oh, okay, they're coming out with a great marketing campaign, they're coming out with a great product feature or whatever, it sounds really cool, but then you're just like, okay, so like why again? Like why would somebody use this? Why is this important? And that again goes back to it elicits 20% thinking. So I start off everything really philosophical for that reason. It's like almost like a little bit more like removed from like the day-to-day and the actual product itself. So the philosophy behind the vision has never wavered. The philosophy behind the vision is capture and socialize people's inner selves. People's inner selves today, currently, in my opinion, do not consistently or in full form exist on the internet. It just does not. And the only time that you're able to really showcase elements of your inner self are with your really, really close nucleus or with your therapist. And I feel like it's a growing theme that people want to express more of themselves. They want a place to be able to do it, and they want to be able to build like-minded connections based on that. So, you know, when I came out about my anxiety and my depression, I actually looked back at every single product that had been released till that date. Every single one of them was around social and consumer, and all of them were trying to optimize for proper internet social behavior. It was allowing the human to be able to express more on the internet and showcase more of themselves, right? So I kind of think back to almost like the AIM days. In the AIM days, it's like, you know, at school, like I was like outgoing and so forth or whatever, but I was still like shy in many ways. Like there were certain things that I shied away from like being able to show. But as soon as I got behind the keyboard and I was whatever the fuck I was, Mr. Blue Boy or Baller 4104, all of a sudden I was able to like start talking in a much different way. and I was showing a different side of my personality. And so it started off with that core feeling. I was like, well, wait a minute, this internet is allowing me to do something a little differently that my physical self is maybe a little shy from doing. So then if you look at all the products that we released after that, it was photo sharing, then it was chat based, then there was video sharing, and every single one of them was, again, trying to angle to show a different side of your personality. And so I think from that angle, everything's been consistent. How do we extract more of human expression? And then how do we allow you to then build more human connection based on that expression? I feel like an avatar has been the most powerful vehicle to be able to show the most, express the most, and cultivate the most that the photo, video, and text forms haven't been able to justify. So I think like that's more like philosophical, and the fact that it hasn't felt like it's just fallen in our lap. It's been this like, again, this like decade-long journey of really chipping away at like what is like the core nerve behind everything. You know, it's really easy. If somebody told me like, hey, Akash, like we want to be able to get 10 million users via like some type of avatar app. Think of any type of avatar app to get 10 million users before the end of the year. That shit's easy. That actually is easy. The hard part is how does that 10 million turn into 100 million, turn into a billion, and everything remains like quite consistent throughout. That's difficult because you're not trying to build something that's a fad. You're trying to build something that's going to be integral to the way that people, integral in people's lives day to day. And you're predicting what they're going to want. And the only thing that people really, really want day to day is the ability to express themselves, the ability to be able to socialize based on that expression. And actually, let me take a step back. It's like when you think about life, life is really about the experiences you have with the relationships you make. It really just boils down to those two things, right? Like if you think about like, it's the experiences you have with the relationships you make, right? And at the end of the day, experiences are going to become more and more digital, right? And if you guys remember what I was saying yesterday, was like every internet era, every computing device is just trying to make what you already love in life, all the experiences you already love in life, they're trying to make them more accessible at a higher quality, right? So experiences we're tackling, of course, but the relationship part is really, really important. It's like, so who are these people that you're sharing these experiences with? How do you develop those relationships? How do you find those people in the first place? And if we're gonna become more and more digitally immersed, that means you have a wider access of people in the world that you can connect with. But you need to connect with them in a non-transactional manner. And the best way to connect with people, like my closest friends, you know them inside out. When people say, oh, I know that person inside out, what does that mean? Doesn't mean the basic facts. It doesn't mean the highlight moments. It means all the little things about them, all the scenario-based questions. What would McKenna do if she only had 2 dogs and 1 moose on a hill? Like, how would she survive? And you can kind of predict like what she would do because you know all the little things about her, or you know that exact answer to that problem because you guys have talked about shit like that. So I feel like the power of what we're building can actually cater to people learning about the little things of each other, can cater to capturing more information about themselves than ever before, and then therefore being able to connect with other people that maybe have the same information it's not like it's like new discovery, it was just dormant within them. Does that make sense philosophically?
That makes sense.
Philosophically, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you like, so because we're in this philosophically theme, like when it comes to love, you think like, will it allow you to have a more authentic relationship with somebody where it could lead to maybe falling in love with somebody because of the avatar actually represents them in a better version than what an Instagram page is right now, or an Instagram feed, for example?
For sure. Well, here's what I'll say is like, I think any social network never starts off as a social network. It always starts off as some type of like innocent and fun game that allows people to build trust with the platform. And then over time, when people build trust with the platform and people start to use it inherently then to express a certain aspect of their life. Then they connect on that, and then they can engage in more serious relationships, whether that's friendship or intimate relationship. I think eventually, not right now, but maybe in 5 years, people for sure will use an avatar to be able to get closer with each other. And it might be through the form of just being able to spend more time with that person via the digital experiences, right? If you imagine a world where you're wearing like a headset and you want to be hanging out and being present with somebody, instead of going to like, you know, there's a girl in Tokyo that you've fallen in love with and you know them from the avatar social network, the different activities that you've been able to participate in and things like that, or different games or whatever it may be. And then it's like, you know what, I want to go like play basketball with that person. Well, play basketball with them via a game on mobile doesn't really quite feel like they're present. Mentally present, but not physically present. But when you have the headset on, and then it has proper motion tracking, and it's able to take everything spatially into account, and it feels like I'm playing basketball. And I can look at my surroundings, I'm in a basketball arena, and then the girl that I'm falling in love with in Tokyo is also standing there and playing basketball with me, and it feels like she's playing basketball with me. I feel like that's when we're gonna get into a mode where people can fall in love with each other via an avatar. We have some ways, but you know, like I feel like this journey is very, you have to like chip away at something like this. So like, I'll give an example. We know what the end state of this is, right? So let's say we ship the end state today, which we could totally do. It's a flop. And the reason why is because instead of being one step ahead of where everybody is, where it's like a nice smooth baton handoff, you're way too far ahead. People are gonna be like, they're gonna reject that idea, right? If I go to a kid today that's 16 years old and I'm like, hey, you're gonna find your next boyfriend or girlfriend as an avatar and it's gonna be an AR, they're gonna laugh me out of the room, right? And honestly, if I gave them a perfectly functionally, or if I gave them a perfect working product of our end state, it would flop, right? So it's like taking them along this journey and hooking them where they currently exist, playing into the behaviors that currently persist, being one step ahead of where they are and handing them one, even if you know what 5 steps is, you're only handing them one step ahead, right? It's kind of like a dog and a treat. It's like you're just like kind of like leaving these treats and you're leading them along the path. Well, eventually you'll get to that place, but you gotta be really careful. Because what could end up happening is like, yeah, you might get traction, but you're gonna get traction with the wrong community. And when I say wrong community, it just depends what your goal is. Our goal is to deliver avatars to everybody and be the next username. Okay? If you start with any other community that's not the center of culture with something that important, it is not gonna proliferate to the masses, right? And so, look, we're going after a notoriously difficult demographic in a notoriously difficult space because the behaviors in the kids are ever changing, and you need to be able to see all the pieces and how they're manipulating from one end of the spectrum to the next. And so far we've done a pretty good job, but like you can never, ever take a back seat and just kind of, you can never ever just be like a passive observer. Like you need to be like an obsessive and passionate participant in whatever is happening in culture to know exactly what to deliver them next. That's why, you know, our end state will be people are representing themselves as avatars. The avatars represent far more than just visually what they maybe aspire to be or what they maybe represent in that context in that moment. But it packages a lot of information and data about themselves that has never been stored on the internet before, right? And we figured out a really interesting way to be able to gather that information about you, Akash, right? So it's like, you know, what I said earlier, it's like what defines somebody's interesting personality is the mystery behind the personality, is the clues behind the personality. And you try to emulate the real world as much as possible. If you come into my house, you'll look around and you'll see the design, right? Like you guys were there yesterday. So it's like, you know, you see the certain chairs and you see the certain sofa and you see like where I place the dog. You see how messy or tidy it is. You see like the little like art that I've put on the wall. You see like the way that I talk to Megan back and forth. You see like what I decided to plant in the garden. And you can't quite put your finger on exactly what this defines about Akash, but you've starting to build this understanding of Akash, and people today call it energy, right? And some of this stuff is intangible and you can't put into words, and that's fine. It's not meant to be a bio, right? It's meant to be this fluid, ever-changing energy or personality. And so that shit is not being represented on the internet on Akash's Instagram profile. That is not being represented on Twitter. That is not being represented anywhere, right? Unless you're committing to consistently sharing your fleeting thoughts and emotions every given moment. But that's just not happening, right? Like, the only people that do that are content creators. And even then, it's rigged, right? It's not natural. And the reason why it's not natural, one, the social graph of every single platform. Two, there's public vanity metrics that are associated with everything that you basically put out there. And three, the format of the content does not cater to inner self-emotion. Inner self-emotion, like if we're thinking about what fluid, ever-changing energy is, it feels very artistic, right? And so an avatar can be, again, this walking manifestation, art manifestation of all your emotions and feelings and thoughts. I don't think an inner self is 100%. I think when people hear me say inner self, they think of like, oh, it means like your very like emotional side or your very vulnerable side, and that's part of it. But I just think of inner self as like thoughts. I boil it down to like really simple questions. It's like, where are you during a low light moment? When I say low light, it means I'm not with my friends, I'm not at a party, I'm not at Coachella, I'm not at dinner, I'm not partying. It's not something that I would post on Instagram. So where are you? Oh, I'm in bed. Oh, I'm walking to the coffee shop. I'm sitting at the park alone. So it's like, where are you? Number two, during that low light moment, who are you thinking about? Number three, what are you thinking about? Number four, how are you feeling? That alone already summarizes so much. If we can get, so that's one data point. If we can get all of those answers at 1:31 p.m., and then we can get it at 1:32 p.m., and 1:33 p.m., and 1:34 p.m., 1:35 p.m., and we can get all those data points on a consistent basis, you start to really develop somebody's personality. Now, it's hard to just ask somebody a question like that every single time and get really authentic answers. So how are you going to be able to uncover all of those responses in a very natural way, right? Like, I can't control, I mean, like, unless you're like enlightened, which nobody is, unless you're enlightened, you can't 100% control your mind at any given moment, right? They have a mind of its own. And so the way that we've gone about creating our roadmap has been very much around how do we use different games or behaviors or experiences rather to be able to get people to make choices through conversation or choices through gameplay that uncover more information about them, and then we store it and we keep storing it. And as you store it, the person learns more about themselves, and as they learn more about themselves, they can unlock more personalized gameplay too. And I can get into functionally exactly how it works, but philosophically, that's how we're going about it. Because it's just really powerful. I mean, like, even if you just think about it from a data perspective, it's so powerful to sit there and be like, this is information about yourself that has never, ever been formally captured. That's getting to the core of stuff. So yeah, we can create a really cool avatar app. I can think of like 20 different novel things around that. An app that uses avatars that are gonna be cool for 3 months. We can think of 20 different things, but it doesn't have any staying power. The only time it has staying power in social and consumer is when you're hitting a very specific nerve that has not yet been hit from any of the other social consumer apps out there.
One of the things that comes to mind right now, like just as you're saying all this, is like kind of like in a way, like reinventing like what your personal profile feed looks like on Facebook and Instagram, like in a completely more, like if you were to go to my avatar and study my avatar for 5 minutes, and you go, okay, I know who Jeff is.
You're just like, and it's kind of like, it's just trying to emulate the real world. So it's like, I'm looking at you. You and I don't say one word to each other, but you have clothes on, you have shit like that you own, and you maybe sit a certain way, and maybe you like breathe a certain way, and then like you stare at someone's eyes long enough, then you're thinking about what they're thinking, and then you make up like your own story in your head. And again, that's you're a walking bulletin board of context clues. but you're not telling me exactly who you are, right? It was like kind of like the analogy, or not the analogy, like the example I gave earlier. I'm like, dude, I've been seeing you wear these black boots. There's 1,000 different reasons why you could be wearing black boots. But I'm gonna pair that with the fact that you're wearing this Harley Davidson shirt, and pair you with the fact with some facts that I know. I know that you're a content creator. I know that you grew up in this, and this area, whatever. And then you start to make these assumptions. But like you just, again, there's like an energy and there's an idea of who this person may be. But what makes it addictive in a fun way, and why people fall in love with each other, is there's always mystery associated with a human being. Always is. Even with with your wives, like with my girlfriend, I said there, I know her inside out. But I don't know what she's thinking at 24/7, every single segment of the day. And that's what makes our relationship fun, right? And yeah, I just feel like right now there's no place on the internet to freely express your thoughts. No way. Like there's no, like, going back to AIM, honestly, do you guys remember like you would set like your away status and it would literally be like gibberish? Like I would literally like just like slam the keyboard and just post it. Or I would be like, yeah, I'm listening to this, and this, like whatever, like hit my cell or some shit like that. Like everybody had these like, that was the only time I felt like people could actually say whatever the fuck they wanted and it was like totally fine. There's no place to do that. You know how many times a day that I want, you know how many times a day I want to tweet and I don't because I'm just like, all right, let me think about my social graph there. Let me think about like, I have to be careful to say it like this. Oh, should I word it like that? There's literally, the only place where you can freely do that is like in your maybe best friend's group chat. You're just like, fuck it, I don't really care. Which I think is a problem because like if you make two assumptions about humans, one assumption is that people want to express themselves. And then number two is people want recognition for their expression. If you make the assumption that everybody wants to express themselves, and then you look at they're only expressing 0.01% of themselves, which are highlight moments that you currently see on social media, that means people are missing out on 99.9% of recognition opportunity because they're just not sharing the 99.9% of who they are. I think that's why the internet in many ways gets a bad rep. Because they're like, oh my God, people are using it to escape. Because you're comparing each other on highlight moments only. You're not comparing yourself on the real shit. You're not comparing yourself on the actual stuff, right? And so if avatars can somehow bring some of like the actual self into the picture, and then people can relate on real shit, I feel like that's gonna lead to more authentic connections and then happier lives, truthfully happier lives. Yeah. I can talk, so a couple things I can do. I could talk about thematically why I think avatars are going to be really important in the future of the internet. I can also talk, okay, then I could talk about, functionally, what is this avatar social network that we're building? So I can be like, I can be
I'm actually super interested. I'm just excited.
No, for sure. So I can be super direct around what that is. And then number three is I can talk about the future end state, like way end state. It's like, all right, in 7 years, this is what we expect genies to do. I can do those three things.
I think number one is critical for the story. Number two will definitely satiate our curiosities. I think number three is important to have. I don't know if this doc, but I think it's great footage to have 7 years from now once you've built it, once
yeah.
you've achieved it. You know what I mean? So, but number one, 100%. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, if we had time, all three, obviously, but to prioritize it, I would love to hear, because this is, you're building an avatar company, so I want to hear your thoughts on.
But it's an avatar company, but then it is social.
Well, it's a communications company, but like avatar is central to the entire.
That's what excites me. I'm like, damn, bro.
Yeah, so I do want to hear about that.
Yeah. So there's three elements in my mind that make up the future of the internet. There's three popular trends that everybody talks about, right? There's this desire to exist more digitally. So let's call that right now AR or MR. Number two, there's a desire to democratize the way that things get created. That trend is AI. And number three, which is not as popular right now, but I still have belief in it as utility, is this desire to be able to make sure that everything that is being created is authenticated. That's blockchain. So when I take all three of those into account, what I determine as a future of the internet, and what I call it, is the spatial axis. Now, in the spatial axis, I believe an avatar is a prerequisite in any of those trends. For any type of social, interactive AR experience, you have to show up as something, right? And so in Web 1, if you showed up as a username, and in Web 2, you showed up as a profile. If I'm interacting with you in AR, you're not gonna be a floated username, and you're not just gonna be a static rendition of yourself, you're gonna be an avatar. Now, whether that's hyper-realistic avatar, whether that's a Pixar avatar, whether it's a fantastical avatar, is totally up to you, right? And like we can get into later about like how our tech supports all of that, because I think that's like quite important actually. Like get into the functional stuff, but that's number one. Number two, as AI continues to grow, there's gonna be AI personas that end up growing in popularity. People are gonna fall in love with AI personas the same way that they've fallen in love with influencers in today's world. As that happens, people will want a representation for these people, right? It's not gonna be just text. So what is that gonna be? An avatar, right? And then finally, you have blockchain. Now blockchain, in my opinion, is gonna be really important as we democratize UGC and also AI personas. You're gonna wanna know which persona is real and coming from the source of truth and which one is not. And that's where blockchain can play a role, right? And so I feel like an avatar functionally, just to be able to exist properly within the future of the internet, if we assume that these three trends, predominantly even like the first two, are going to manifest itself in full vision, an avatar is 100% required. It's not even, it's a non-starter, right? So that's how an avatar can play a role in the future of the internet. I'm trying to think if there's anything else around that. Yeah, does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I think all the big players recognize it too, right? I mean, Meta, Apple, are all building avatar tech.
You call it spatial view? Is what
Spatial axis.
Spatial axis.
Yeah, what's interesting, I mean, like we have the venture fund humans. And I think I was telling you guys this in the first call, but you know, it's actually kind of funny, and I know we've talked about this a few times, but just to like be fully comprehensive about it. If you look back over the past 100 years, you can basically predict, not even basically predict, if you look back at the past 100 years, every single step of the way, the culture, which equates to youth, cared about the exact same things. And those things that they cared about were repackaged as different applications depending on the computing device of that era. Which, if you go based on what history has told us, you can kind of predict what are going to be the applications of tomorrow, specifically in the spatial axis. And then you can pick apart what is going to be the crux technology or the important technology that ends up powering those applications, right? And so we built out this investing model based on it, right? So like, for example, again, this goes back to being philosophical so that you're not getting stuck in the weeds. You just like zoom out, you're like, dude, humans. Always think about like just humans. What do humans care about? Okay, what do the kids care about? They care about looking unique. They care about making friends and hanging out with friends. They care about having an intimate relationship, girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, and they just don't want to be bored. If you summarize like a kid's priority in life, it really comes down to those four things. Okay, so going back to life is just about the experiences you make with the relationships you have. The question becomes, how does the internet help kids achieve those four things? So if you look at Web 1 and you look at the computer, and then you look at Web 2, or sorry, Web 1, you look at the mobile phone, and Web 2, you look at the computer, you can see the most popular applications in every single one of those categories all directly go back to three things that map back to those four. One is identity expression. The second one is identity socialization. And the third one is identity experiential, right? And so it really comes down to like, one, like does the mobile phone allow you to express yourself in a way or an identity in a way that you haven't been able to do before? Number two, are you able to then be able to make friends and hang out with friends or make relationships and be able to manifest those feelings? And then finally, do you have digital activities that allow you to keep entertained, right? And so what we've been able to do is, over the years, been able to pick apart all the different games that have been popular and see how they've been reskinned for the next era when the new computing device comes, right? So an example would be something like Match.com then becoming Tinder and then predicting like, okay, so then this is what it could look like in an AR realm. Or you could do something like shopping, right? It's like, how does the internet make what today's shopping in the real world, how do you make it like more accessible? So like shopping in like Web 1, for example, like what was Web 1 really about? Web 1 was all about just reading. So in Web 1, I could just like read about a bunch of things that were available in some of these different shops. Web 2 was all about read and write. So it was like the form of interaction for the very first time. So all of a sudden now I can start like buying stuff. Okay, so then like what is the future of the internet gonna represent? It's like, okay, I can not only read about what's being sold. Not only can I also buy it if I want to, but to make what I can do in the real world far more accessible. Now all of a sudden with this computing device like AR, I can try on the clothing. Now I can buy it, then I can check it out and I can bring it back to me. Okay, so if we think that people are gonna be able to try on clothing for good sizing in the future of the internet, what is gonna be the tech that's gonna be super important to be able to nail that concept? Okay, let's define all those pieces of tech. Okay, now based on these pieces of tech, let's define what's gonna be good criteria for that tech to work properly for this use case. Let's define all of that. Okay, great. Now we have an investment model already created for shopping. Right? So we ran that for like 10 different categories, and then we have like maybe like 100 different companies that we've identified. Yeah, hopefully it works.
That's, I mean, that version engineering what you're gonna need, and then it's about like manifesting, it's easier to manifest that because you're looking you know exactly what you gotta find.
What you guys should do is, there's almost like a few things that you guys should watch for like almost like, to get like different content. One is the speech that I honestly just gave to the company 3 weeks ago. And it's like our, excuse me, it's like our company OKRs one, which I go into like a lot of like trend and thematic stuff. Number 2 is the Series C announcement, because I know that you guys want that one. And then another one is called Dev Kit Speaker Series. The Dev Kit Speaker Series, everything I just like verbally talked about, I went through all the data points and the chart on the screen, and I went through all of this in front of the whole company so that they could see it. I think that shit might be like really, really helpful, truthfully. Yeah, it's honestly so fascinating. I'm trying to like remember all like the details, but there was some like good stuff in there for sure. It was dope.
It's so weird, like, I think you're, from my point of view, like, you're the only one talking about this.
Really? Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else. That's really.
Talk to the Genie Studio. So what is it exactly? Say you log in, you don't have to like go through the onboarding, but how does it work? How does it work?
How about this? How about I talk about the Genie Social Network and then Genie Studio and how it fits in it? Because Genie Studio is all it is, just so you know, it's a first-party game that should be the first example for all of our developers to be able to create their own game. And like really like the end state, so like Genie Studio in the grand scheme of things is like a speck in the sand. It's time, exactly. So it's like, it's basically like developers are sitting there and be like, so what does a good game mean in the Genie's Avatar social network? And we're like, okay, like why don't we go ahead and just show you how to leverage our dev kit and build like a really meaningful game?
Got it. Yeah, it's a social network, local work.
Yeah, so the way to think about our social network is, I'm trying to think how I can talk about this in the form of like capturing your inner self. So it's almost like why avatars? Why avatars? We just talked about why avatars, right? It's like we're trying to create the social network of tomorrow, and we think that's where people are going to be able to capture, socialize their inner selves. Remember, just staying one step ahead of everybody. So why avatars? Well, it's going to be able to, of course, physically be able to show you all these context clues that make up a personality. It's going to be able to store data in a way that a human can understand it, and in like a social way a human can understand it. But then most importantly, we just defined how it's likely going to be the identity representation, considering the next computing device and considering the backbone of the internet being AI, right? So we're like, an avatar, we need to be able to invest in and make sure that we can solidify that position. Now, the second part of it is like, so what's the utility of the avatar for consumers? As it pertains to capture and socialize your inner self. Capture and socialize your inner self is a very, very like serious thing to ask somebody to do. And so what's the best way to be able to build trust on a platform and get them to explore the platform? We thought games, or what we've been calling experiences. The best way to describe our social network is thinking about it as Genie's Party, which is basically like Mario Party, or if you played Bitmoji Party, on steroids. And the biggest difference between us and let's say a Mario Party or a Bitmoji Party is the fact that it's interoperable visually and it's interoperable from a data perspective. What does that mean? It means that if I'm playing one game, which is like, let's say it's a shooting game, but it's like instead of like me shooting bullets, it's me throwing like snowballs at a snowman or something like that, and I collect the snowballs wherever I am, and I want to jump into another game, which let's say is like a racing game, I can then jump into that game, bring my snowballs from that previous game, and then throw the snowball in front of somebody else if they're like driving like a go-kart and then they slip on it, right? The only way that it can happen is through the technology and the auto-rigging roadmap that we currently have. So what we've been working on for the past 3.5 to 4 years, and you were talking to JB earlier, who runs our R&D division. The way that it works is we've been training tons of data sets over the past years to be able to predict how different art styles and aesthetics and avatars and objects can interact with each other depending on the world that they exist in. Because we've been able to build out a roadmap that allows all these art styles and aesthetics to automatically work with each other, it then allows us to be able to crowdsource from everybody, right? So like the biggest difference between us and Mario Party and us and Bitmoji Party is that Nintendo built the 15 games that were in Mario Party. Snapchat built the 15 games that were in Bitmoji Party. With us, we're hoping that we can have millions and millions of games that are crowdsourced from all the developers or all the different technical artists in the world, and they all automatically work together. So imagine if the entire app store for Apple, all of the apps automatically work together. Not just based on your identity, but based on the utility that you get from one platform to the next, right? So all I'm talking about so far has just been visual interoperability. But we have something called a traits framework. The traits framework is a protocol that all of these developers are going to be able to build against, where, again, the goal here is to capture and socialize your inner self, right? So the question becomes like, well, how do I capture my inner self? We think that somebody's inner self, going back to thoughts, going back to choices, are all defined based on the way that you navigate a scenario, right? So let's say, for example, I'm in, and this is how we're gonna start and eventually get more and more serious as people build trust with the platform. Let's say I'm in the snowball game, and the way that I'm talking to the snowman NPC, or the way that I'm talking to other friends that are also snowmen or snowwomen in the game, is in a certain way. We're gonna be reading all of that, and we're gonna be then influencing your stats as an avatar. So you know in FIFA, how they show you basically these 5 stats: passing, ball control, speed, or whatever, right? But the only time those stats change for Messi, once a year, every single time they come out with FIFA 2022, then 2023. What if Messi's scores changed based on everything he did on and off the field? So he was at the bar last night. Shit, your ball control is gonna slip a little bit. Oh, okay, like you played this game yesterday and like you just like were able to work on your agility. Okay, your speed just went up to 99. So imagine, instead of it being just based on a sport, you as a human consistently had stats that defined your personality. And depending on your stats, it would then impact your gameplay. So let's say, for example, I have all these traits. I have an aggression score of this. I have a kindness score of this. I have an empathetic score of this. A developer can be sitting there building his next game, and he can say, you know what, if you come in with an aggression score of around 90 plus, you unlock this gameplay, or you unlock this object. And so the way that you can think about it is, the more games you play, the more you learn about yourself, because the more traits that you unlock and the more things that you get, the more personalized gameplay you're able to have. So your experience in Genie's Party is very different than mine, it's very different than Roberto's, and very different from Rolando's, right? Because it's all based on who I am as a person, and developers are working with each other to make it all interoperable. It's based on this one big traits protocol, right? Is that making sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so what was I gonna say? That's the capturing part, right? So that's like how you're capturing more and more about yourself. You're learning about yourself through conversational AI and then also through choices you make in gameplay. So going back to the snowball example, let's say I'm like talking shit to my friends or I'm talking in a certain way, whatever. But let's say instead of, there's many ways to defeat the snowman. And maybe like the way that I defeat the snowman is by using a fire flamethrower. Instead of using maybe a snowball machine, or instead of using maybe a bat or whatever, there's different choices you can make that says something about your personality that our AI layer is able to go ahead and decipher and then start incrementing or decrementing your stats accordingly. And you can unlock expressive traits, which are like more unique traits that are then pegged back to foundational traits. And I won't bore you guys with the intricacies or like how exactly the traits framework works. Unless you guys want to know, like, should I go into that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So like, there's 3 different protocols then. So if I'm going into detail, then I'll go through all 3 protocols. There's the traits protocol, there's the things protocol, and then there's the actions protocol, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to give as much freedom to the developer to build it as interoperable as possible. No matter what, from a visual perspective, everything is going to be interoperable, right? So like if you're like an anime game and like you get an anime character and then you show up in this game and it's more like Disney aesthetic, whatever, it's all going to work together. And if you want to do something basic like shake hands with a dog and this person created a dog and then you created like like a superhero or something, it knows how to shake hands and it also knows how to be able to hug each other, right? So those basic actions. But if you want like very personalized gameplay or you want very personalized utility, then the developers in our ecosystem have to be building against this interoperable traits framework. The way that the traits framework work is that there's 2 different types of traits. One, foundational traits. So the foundational traits are really like the classic ones. It's like stability, it's like stability, it's anger, it's whatever, like all like really, really basic ones. Things that are easy for a developer to build against and correlate to gameplay, but maybe visually not as interesting to a user. What might be interesting to the user is, Akash, you were playing a game a certain way and you were talking to people a certain way or whatever, so you've just unlocked the trait, you're most likely to kill a frog. And that's interesting to me, and that's like kind of weird, and it says something about me, and it says something about my inner self, or it says something about like the little things about me. But a developer doesn't want to build against that trait. That is pegged back to, let's say, aggression, and all of a sudden it influences my aggression score, right? And so a developer only wants to build, to make it simple, at least to start, only wants to build against those 20 different traits. Now, with those traits, you can unlock objects, which we have branded as things. So let's say, for example, I go into like the snowball game or the snowman game. I have now unlocked the snowball machine gun because of the way that I conversed or the way that I acted in that game. That also has traits. That thing has traits. So the developer now has the ability to either build against your avatar's traits, or the developer can build against a thing as well. They can say, hey, if you bring that snowball machine gun into my game, this is how it will act in my game, right? Now, that snowball machine gun has to have an action protocol, right? Can it be shot? Can it be thrown? Can it be worn? Can it be consumed? So that a developer might sit there and say, if you bring anything that is throwable into my game, and it has X, Y, and Z traits, this is how it will act. So I'll give an example. Let's say I'm in an safari game and there's like leopards and lions and fucking zebras and giraffe or whatever. They all have traits, right? They all have stats themselves. They're basically avatars. It's like they move like this, they have this aggression score, whatever. And then I get into a racing game. They may say you can use the race cars here, or you can bring anything that is rideable. Let's say these animals have they have the characteristic which is rideable. I might be able to bring my lion into this game, And not only is it visually interoperable, but that lion has stats too. So we don't want it to just come here and then it drives like another race car. It's like, no, this lion's gonna act like a fucking lion and I'm gonna race you while you're in your go-kart, I'm riding a lion, I'm right next to you, right? So immediately we're trying to create this interoperable mega universe. And we're using games as a way to inconspicuously and subconsciously get people to discover more and more about themselves, and then have utility that comes along with that as well. So it's a long-term play for sure, but we feel like games always is the way that it starts, and it gets people at least like trying this out, building more data. And I feel like if people see that there's utility that comes along with this inner self data that currently they are not uncovering anywhere else on the internet, they'll want to do it more and more and more. Make sense?
That makes sense.
So that's at least like the,
Because you're kind of like, sorry.
no, you go for it.
Like it's kind of like simulating the way we experience human life. You know,
One-
sports, entertainment.
One to one. Yeah, like if you want to go back and just be philosophical, which is exactly, like, again, like it's almost like, okay, one, why? And then two, think about the real world. It's like in the real world, it's like if I have my truck and then I go to like off-roading and then I pop its tires, not like when I bring it back to the office, all of a sudden the tire's like magically back to its like original form. It's like it's popped and there's damage to it, right? So we're trying to replicate the real world as much as possible, where it's like any of these things that you get are able to be transported from one place to the next. It's like actually the one thing that's been consistent with the NFT community stuff, right? It's like the NFT community was trying to do some of this shit. The issue is that the way that it existed in the Web 2 form of games, the demographic that we're going after, and the utility that was being offered was not comprehensive and it was not interesting. We're trying to shift that completely on its head. And we feel like by attacking this demo, by offering really interesting experiences that they're used to already participating in, right? Like Bitmoji Party was one of the most popular things that Snapchat released outside of lenses. And the only reason why it got removed was because they were unable to, because of a political reason, effectively monetize against Apple. And so considering the recession, Evan was then forced to make a tough decision and he removed it. And if you go to TikTok and you look up Bitmoji games, it is like Gen Z lost their mind. They were like, dude, like how, like where did my Bitmoji party go? Like I'm lost forever. Like what am I supposed to do? Like I might kill myself. Like that's literally, I'm not even doing, like people were fucking freaking out. And so like, it's actually funny. It's like in so many ways we're sitting there and we're like, dude, like this is, we can lean into that branding. First of all, like we sit there, we're like, let's just call this fucking thing Genie's Party. Love Bitmoji Party, you're gonna love Genie's Party. It's like Bitmoji Party on steroids. There's millions of games, all built by developers that are kind of like you guys. Here's how it works, blah, 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 whatever. And yeah, we feel like we have a really good shot that way. But again, like it's not like this form of the Avatar social network is supposed to fully capture and socialize people's inner selves quite yet. This is interesting data that people have not captured on the internet, but it's not all of your inner self. But you have to get started somewhere. So if we feel like this is like a really interesting place to start. But yeah, like we've had to build this tech over the last 3.5, 4 years. So much of the core, like people when they ask about like, okay, like the $1 billion valuation, it really comes down to two things. One, it comes down to all of like our celebrity deals and all the celebrity partners that have been leveraging avatars consistently over the past few years. And then two, it's our tech. Like our tech is, if Apple decided they wanted to allocate, I think I told you guys, if Apple wanted to allocate all of their, they decided that this was priority number one, was creating this interoperable tech. And they wanted to allocate all of their resources against this problem. And I spent like a week working with our team on this and like really pushing them down this question. They were like, yeah, it's probably gonna take Apple 18 months to be able to build what we have. 18 months is super fucking valuable to a company of that size, right? So we've built really valuable tech along the way. Now the question becomes, how do we unleash it in a way that also accomplishes our vision, right? And so we feel like this is like a really, really interesting product to be able to deliver to market. It's something that we've been wanting to do since 2017. It's just that to be able to afford the resources to do it right is like really tough. Silver Studio is just one game in this, and we think that avatar fashion is like a really interesting hook to get the users that we like. And like we were talking about this yesterday. It's like outside of just like Snapchat, like I feel like the most popular activity Gen Z cares about this day is just thrifting. Like thrifting is so popular. And there's nobody that's really like trying to tackle that in like a digital format. And so if you look at our user base, and if you look at like even just go to Silver Studio social accounts and like the people that interact with it, you look at Josie, like that is center of culture Gen Z. You talk about like the biggest movers of tomorrow, it's that cohort right there. So Silver Studio is like made for that, but it required a lot of tools. Like we consider ourselves an avatar tools company. I feel like in Web 2, it was like being the network was king and being tools was second fiddle. I think the way that the internet's moving is getting flipped on its head. It's like, who can empower the people of tomorrow to create those networks versus can you own the network entirely itself, right?
As
So
far as like the data, it kind of feels like you guys are playing to a certain extent, like the way I perceive God, keeping track of everything I do in my entire lifetime. That's the way I feel like Genius is now kind of getting the data of every single decision, everything that they create.
Yeah, like if you think about who you are, it's again like the experiences you have. So those are going to be our experiences, our games, right? Our digital experiences. It's the conversations that you have with yourself, thoughts, and then conversations you have with other people. And then 3, it's the choices you make. So that's gameplay. So for us, like those 3 things, it's not going to be one-to-one in the very beginning, but that's a really good starting block for us. It's like, okay, let's get people like used to this and like seeing how their avatar and themselves are getting influenced in the very beginning. We have an MVP that's rolling out in November. That's going to be testing a ton of shit. Yeah, we're pumped. Me and Yamil were on the phone. I don't know if you talked to Yamil yet. He's a wicked designer. We just poached him from Snapchat. He was at Snapchat for 7 years. Actually, some of these guys, Justin and Yamil, they were each one of 13 product designers at Snapchat. And product designers is just like another way to, like, Evan hated the word PM. So he would just like, a product designer is just basically like a product owner. And he believes that like the only people that can basically think about product are people that know how to design too. I don't agree with that, but it's sick if you can. And they met with Evan every single week, and they were just going through like projects with them. And so up until literally they left. And so we got 2 of them over here, and they're dope. And so I was talking to Yamil super late last night going through the MVP, and it's fucking sick. So yeah, we're pumped. We're super, super pumped.
You said something interesting. I've been, most people don't think Apple will ever pursue social, just like not in their DNA, hardware but software company. But I always thought that they would eventually. I think they're in a perfect position, and I think it would manifest itself as an avatar. So I know you would admit it. I know your vision is much greater, but I'm sure you thought about it. Like this would be a perfect acquisition target for Apple, because like you said, it would take them 18 months. It would cost them $8 billion to create. It'd be much easier to hire or to buy the expertise. Is that off record, whatever? Is that something you're working maybe toward, or
It's just, it's weird. It's like, I think the acquisition stuff becomes less monetary, and it comes down to 2 factors. It's like, one, I have my own opinions on money, but then we've also raised a bunch of money, and so like we want to make sure that those people are made whole, minimum, right? Yeah. And so you have a fiduciary duty. You have to be responsible. So you can't just, if I was 100% acting with my heart, zero like brain for fiduciary duty, there'd probably be some decisions at this business that would be slightly altered right now. But like I have to make sure that I hedge against like some of these big bets. So like for example, like we're working with game studios right now. Game studios want to make their entire ecosystem interoperable, of course, right? They're sitting there being like, I don't want to create an avatar system, and also like the amount of money they would generate from a persistent identity. Imagine if fucking every single game that Bandai Namco launched from here on out all automatically worked together, and that they had like a pool of developers that were building these like Bandai mini games for them, right? By the way, that's happening off the record. Like we haven't announced that yet, but it's like we're working with Bandai, Nexon, Sega, like all these game studios. If I was 100% acting just in my heart, I wouldn't be doing any of that stuff. Because I'm just like, it's sick, it's cool, it's interesting, it's like good for the business. Is that getting us further along from capturing and socializing our inner self? Not as much. It's helpful, but not as much. But 30% of me has to be responsible to the business. And for our we've raised $250 million. So it's not like this is $250 million for Akash to just like go like a lot. Like here's what I will say. I have 100x more leeway than any of my counterparts in like the space. Meaning like any founders I know in the space, they are on such a tight leash. My board and my like investor base has been like, yeah, like go be an artist, like go be a creative, like go do your fucking thing. But like, you know, like even I sit there, I'm like, okay, like that seems like a legitimate value. Like if we solve that problem just for studios, that's already a few billion right there, no joke. And so I'm like, okay, if it's that easy, it's leveraging the same tech. It's honestly like we can come out with our own social network. We show an example, all these game studios, we just go to them. Hey, by the way, Discord, you want your own social network just like this? Leverage our tech. Hey, by the way, Netflix, you guys are getting into gaming. You want to come out with Netflix mini games? You want to leverage your content to be able to come out with really interesting mini games? Go ahead, leverage our tech. So it's like easy for us to do. So look, here's what I'll say is that the way that the trends are moving, we're getting more digitally immersed. And the internet, again, is trying to make experiences in the real world more accessible at a higher quality. And so games, at the end of the day, remember we talked about this the first time, it's like the word game is getting redefined, where game doesn't mean Halo, game doesn't mean, you know, like World of Warcraft. Game, at the end of the day, the way that I defined it, is a set of rules that participants partake in order to unlock the next level, whatever that level is. Yeah, TikTok, the most addictive game ever. The game of social hierarchy, the most addictive game ever. Your path to enlightenment, that's a game. Your a soccer, like, you know, playing soccer, that's a game. Everything in life is a game. And so it just comes down to an experience or an activity. So if you think about games, or what Genie's avatar experiences are gonna be as more of just activities, right? Then I think everybody has to get into this the way that the internet is moving, right? So like anybody that's a giant in the field, that they have ambitions and they want to accrue the generation of tomorrow, the generation of tomorrow is gonna go to the place that offers the best internet activities. So if Apple's gonna get into that, then, which by the way, they are getting into it, right? They just partnered with Unity. They're saying Unity, go build us as many addictive, or not addictive, go build us the highest quality games as you possibly can. Internet activities for the future of the internet. Unity's like, cool, we're gonna do that. We're sitting there being like, look, you guys are probably gonna cover more traditional games, but the social ones I think you might miss. And no matter what, Apple's not gonna be the only player of tomorrow. There's gonna be like 20 of them. Okay, if there's gonna be 20 of them, somebody's gonna need some help. So of course, like you have to have, when I think about an acquisition, is less about the monetary outcome, at least for me. It's more about who's gonna help us realize the vision further. Sounds cheesy, sounds cliche, but that's the truth. What would fucking suck is if we sold to somebody who just shut us down within like a week and you're like, that was a decade's worth of work, hello. Yeah, so you're just like, dude, that's like sucks. And then you have this money and then you have 20 Range Rovers and you don't know what to do with it and then you just sit there and then you're sad. So like I feel like at the end of the day, it's like, it sounds cheesy, but it really is like, this path and this journey has been like so fulfilling.
So the way you said, you don't consider your competition avatar tool creators. You consider your competition anybody creating experiences on the internet. It's like Instagram, Apple, Fortnite. These are your biggest competitors, not necessarily like a Snapchat or.
Correct.
It's redefining the definition of like what avatar is, though, right? Like, it's not really what the way I used to envision avatar before this week is completely different the way I see it now.
Dude, the way that like people thought the word of avatar in 2016 was basically just this like static rendition of yourself that could be populated into 30 different stickers that you could share with each other on iMessage. Then it moved into like a video game character, kind of, and then it became like a profile picture that people started to use outside of gaming. And now the way that it's moving is more virtual being, in my opinion, right? It's like, it is more like it's supposed to be this extension of yourself that you use as a primary method of expression and communication. That has never happened before, right? So imagine like hanging out with like your dad or your mom in this future of the internet as avatars. Like that's where it's moving. So having that type of representation has never yet happened. But I think for that to happen is that it has to be more than just visual representation. There needs to be really interesting information and data stored within that representation that makes it unique.
It's just scary though.
It's hella weird. Yeah, it's super weird.
Like, you can also censor somebody based on their actions, and like, there's a trail now. Like,
Look, you bring up a good point. People have asked me, like
Black Mirror type.
very Black Mirror. Look, we speak things into existence, right? Here's what I'll say. Like one of the biggest questions that I get asked is like, whenever people like really go through like the specs of almost what we're building, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. They're like, yo, are people gonna be okay with this? Like, you're literally analyzing every single aspect of their behavior. I'm like, as long as the value they get from it is better than their concerns around us being able to uncover all this shit about them, they'll be fine.
I think the concerns are overstated, man. I really don't think people care. Like,
The
remember,
majority, the 99.9%
every time that these smear campaigns, I guess whatever it is, when threads came out, I remember it was like, oh, Meta, look at all the data they're collecting. Nobody actually cares.
Oh, look, the value that people are getting from the TikTok algorithm outweighs their concerns around China maybe observing their behaviors.
Correct.
The value they get from a personalized ad on Instagram that they might actually care about buying outweighs their concern about Instagram looking into their shit. So the question becomes, is the personalized gameplay and the connections they make through their avatar going to outweigh the fact that we're looking at their gameplay and their conversations to deliver them that experience? That's the question it comes down to. And if the answer is no, we're fucked. If the answer is yes, then...
But you know what scares me? And I'm thinking like way ahead. Is like, imagine like a marketing company using like NPCs to run ads on you.
Mhm.
You're in the game and somebody's talking to you, selling you something without you even fucking knowing. Yeah, I was like, if I was a marketing company, like, okay, we know exactly what this guy likes. Let me go talk to him.
That's how
The only, and that is a good concern. The way that we would think about it is like who gets access to people's traits, right? And I feel like the way that is going to evolve in the future is that the creators are actually going to evolve into those developers. We call them architects. Yeah. So there's like designers and there's architects. The architects are the only ones that can build against traits. And you have to be able to use it for very certain reasons and so forth. When it comes to advertising, I haven't even like thought that I haven't gone deep into advertising.
It's like, yeah.
But it's a really good point.
Those are things that kind of like, for me, I always think about like manipulation or.
Oh, for sure.
Look, if you guys start going crazy, critical mass, you have tens of millions, like you just get the craziest momentum, there's gonna be hit pieces coming, right? the privacy concerns, but I've never seen that be effective.
But I'm sure you've gone through the whole spectrum of thoughts, right? That's why I'm bringing it up.
For sure. No, it's
popped in my head. I didn't
there's a lot of bad shit that could happen with this. There's a lot of bad stuff that could happen with this if we miss the mark for sure. And by the way, more than likely we are going to miss the mark. That statistically more than likely right now we're probably going to miss the mark. I would say that over time, historically for genies, we won't miss the mark. In our first go, we probably will. If we don't, then that would be sick. It'd be, no. One time we hit the mark right on the head. I think it was like with the celebrity creators. But actually most of the time in social and consumer, it's like the first thing that you ship, you're like, okay, cool, we're 45 degrees off. I would say like I think anybody that's going to be manipulating, it all comes down to who has access to the data to be able to deliver the experience. And so I think what's going to come down to is like who gets the verification symbol basically for architects to be able to build against traits. For advertisers, who gets access to what type of traits, and then how are you being transparent to the user around the fact that this is an ad, right? So that's like the whole point, like with even like on Instagram, hashtag ad, hashtag this, like you have to go through sponsored, all that type of stuff to make sure that people understand it. Exact same type of philosophical stuff is gonna get applied to NPCs, gameplay, all of that stuff. But if it's interesting and it adds value to the person, they'll probably sit there and be like, I know this is an ad, but it's kind of dope, so I'm gonna like entertain.
I'm buying this shit.
Yeah, or I'm gonna go hang out with it.
I buy shit off Instagram all the time, and I'm like, thank you.
I buy so much shit off Instagram, but like, but it's a good point, right? It's like, it can get dangerous really quickly if the value's not there. Not dangerous, but like the tide will turn against you so quickly if the value isn't there. If there's no value and you're trying to fucking advertise on top of them, then people are like, dude, I hate this platform, I'm out. That's why I think about monetization last. Monetization stuff's honestly like the easy part in my opinion. Like anytime that you have like traction, it's like in today's world, it's just like, okay, cool, we can do this, this, and this.
Off record, I mean, I feel like this could be great for the election when you run for president.
There's a lot of cool shit in this, dude. I mean, like if we could actually build this fucking social network, this would be massive. Millions and millions of crowdsourced games where people can work with each other and you're hitting the core nerve of a human that has never been hit before, and they get value for it. Like in so many ways, we're building like.
And if you can build a global lobby.
Yes,
That's all
yes,
I want.
yes.
I want a global
What
lobby.
would be great is like if people that are using the social network can also, earn a living from it.
Oh, I think that's gonna be again like if we can prove that people actually like playing these games, that part's gonna be the easy part in my mind.
Yeah.
But the way that I almost again going back to the real world, always drawing back to the real world. Imagine if it kind of already happens. This already happens, but it just doesn't happen for your personality. It happens for your contributions to Earth. So like, for example, right now, everybody here has certain access to things based on their contributions to Earth. How do we reward contributions to Earth? It's with money, right? That's the currency. And then you get access to certain stuff. What happens if you had certain access to shit based on your astrology sign? And your astrology sign was ever changing depending on the way that you went about life. So like, kind of that's what we're doing in some ways, right? It's like Pisces, you as a Pisces, you get X, Y, and Z starting block stuff. And that unlocks the way that you go about life, and you get to do certain stuff and blah, blah, blah. And you get more and more things based on the fact that you are a Pisces. And it's ever changing, right? But like that is your starting block. So like what we're doing is almost like a horoscope for your mood and your emotions. And based on the way that you act as a human, your emotions and your mood will be ever changing, but then you again get to pursue life in a really unique format. It's kind of what we're doing in some ways, at least to
Like
start.
great games, I feel like it's the game of the games.
Yeah.
Akash, like in the Genesis chapter 1, it's like in the beginning, Akash created the heavens and the earth. Like you're creating everything, because you really have to think about everything.
It's
You're
crazy.
creating pretty much another world.
You could think about everything, but what you ship should just be part of it, and then you just.
It's like a structure, and let everybody else come in.
The question I always ask people is like, is less about how long is this gonna take to build? It's what can we ship in 2 weeks? So when you change the mentality to that, because I didn't what I'm talking about right now is so grandiose. We talked about this in 2017. I have fucking documentation. It was called like the Genie's Vision Tree. That showed. No, it was like this documentation where I built like this vision tree that basically showed like, here are the different aspects of an avatar experience. We want to empower tools that allow people to achieve each aspect of this experience. But it's going to take us and I had roots, which define what we can build today, and then branches, which is like, if we are able to execute these roots and we can afford the resources, we then get to work on the branches. And when you guys look at the vision tree, all of the branches are shit that we're now finally working on today. Avatar with intelligent capabilities, a social network for these avatars to exist within, and then a developer kit that empowers people to create those experiences so people can connect, right? And so we're finally at the place where like after 4 years, we have the interoperable tech to be able to crowdsource this entire world, this entire ecosystem. But we have to be careful to not like, if we rely too much on like just the community to create this experience and they don't know like what makes a good experience, we're in trouble. That's why we do things like Silver Studio. That's why we have a division just for first party games, so that Genies is always maintaining 50% of the game creation in our ecosystem. If there's 100 games that people can play, 50 of them are from Genies, right? We want to do that until people get used to this. And then at one point it's gonna have a life of its own.
Yeah, kind of like when Apple launched the App Store.
Exactly. They had a shit ton of their own apps. They're like, hey, here you go. And then like, we're gonna be the app store in many ways, right? So like the same way that Apple sits there every single year, they roll out like iOS 15. When they roll out iOS 15, they're like, here are a bunch of new features that come with this developer kit. If you leverage these features, we're gonna put you in apps we love. We're then gonna have like a top chart, right? And so they start curating the ones to start to show people these are really good apps leveraging our tools. We're just coming out with a bunch of fucking tools, right? we're gonna have a promo that says like, here are the games that we love. Here are games that are trending, whatever. You start curating it so people know like what defines a good game in this ecosystem. And a good game, in our opinion, is gonna be a highly interoperable one. So it's like, which game can ingest the most things and the most different types of traits? And then the things that you procure in this game, and how many places can you use this thing? How many places can I use like the snowball machine gun? Can I use it in hundreds? Have you built it for high interoperability? And if not, then you're building siloed walled gardens. If you're building siloed walled gardens, and you're kind of building like just like the App Store except avatars, right? So we really want to make sure this is a highly interoperable network.
You know, walled garden, you're gonna run into the same problem as Epic Games, you know? Like, I hope that you guys will be able to silo the Genie's App Store into iOS now.
It's a whole.
About iOS. It's getting, as an iOS developer, bro, it's been like really discouraging.
Yeah, Roblox was the only one that was able to evade that.
Yeah, no wonder
It's really deep. So if you notice during this interview, I kept catching myself saying games, and then I was like, actually, it's an experience. I was like, actually, it's an experience. Actually, it's an experience.
I was gonna ask you about that, like, so can a game or can an experience be as simple as, like, can a developer create something as simple as, like, an experience where somebody just goes and, like, there's a shrine, they can pray there every day?
Yeah, no, 100%.
As simple as that.
They can build anything they want, right? So it's like, it's, again, like, it's
We'll
like,
build something on it. We'll build something simple and fun on it.
Yeah.
it's an activity. It's just an
It actually inspired
activity.
you to become a developer, like a game developer.
So here's what's cool about the way that we built this is that it's not built for the seasoned developer. It's built, we specifically targeted, we're like a college kid, yeah, visual scripting, a college kid that has 2 years of college, of class experience can use this. Honestly, the most popular developers that we have internally are all of our art team. Our technical art team, like Jose over there. Jose he's never coded a day in his life, and he's using visual scripting, and he's building first-party games for Genie Social Network. And what's sick about that is that each game requires art assets, right? And he said, and he was like, well, I'm an artist too, so I'm just gonna make these art assets. It's like a one-stop shop. I'm making all the art assets. I'm able to do drag and drop, and I can make a really fun shooting game. It's pretty dope. So at least that's gonna be our starting block.
You get all the art assets with the AI now, so build something on it, man. It'll be fun.
It'd be super dope.
That was super dope.
I'll get FA, one of the guys, to build something for it. Try it out. Something simple.
I'm hyped, bro. I'm super hyped.
Me too. I'm fucking dead.
No, and actually, like this last hour that you did with us, it really like just gave me so much clarity on the vision on what you're doing.
What I want to do is I want to send you guys those 3 links because I definitely missed a bunch of shit, mostly because I'm just tired. But like, if you guys see shit that you're like, oh, we should like actually get real good footage, then maybe, because we have time tomorrow, right? Then maybe tomorrow, if you guys like, even for 15 minutes, I can just rip through that. Because like the one thing I want to nail, which I felt like I was the most sluggish with, was literally the vision part.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I get like the good stuff.
Quick question too, because there's 2 things. I'm gonna go to Kenny later. What are the ones called Taco Madera? What was it? Taco Madera? No.
Tacos por favor.
Let me write this down.
Tacos por favor is right off.
I want to get footage of it for the video. Tacos por favor. What was the other one? 355 Rose.
550 rows.
And the other one was like where you ordered the pineapple Hennessy. What was that?
Bar? No, that's a drink that I always used to make, pineapple Hennessy.
I'm gonna go
There's
visit
a bar that you used to go to, though, right?
Oh, Delilah.
Serve you as you
Delilah, that's West Hollywood. Yeah. Delilah's used to be sick. It's like trash now, but it used to be sick. Bro, H-Wood is done. H-Wood 2017 was vintage LA. Vintage. So fucking epic.
So trashy now, man.
It's so trashy. Everything honestly is, dude. It's kind of rare to not come across trash in LA these days.
Yeah.
That's why I'm out. But
Another way I was thinking of the avatar is like if the avatar was a form of a way to cut, like me be able to tell like a collaboration of my resume of books and things that I like, movies, but also like a collection of like.
Bro, that's why the global lobby is so important. Everybody can build out their own collection of their art, their belongings,
Yeah.
trophies, accomplishments, like all.
Kind of like that analogy you made about your house being your avatar. You know, okay, well, what is that? You know, we saw your show and you had books there. You got a journal. What would that be in the avatar? It'd be like.
so here's the way that so the reason why the auto rigging tech that we're building is so important. So I don't know if you picked up on this, but traits unlock things. Things can be auto rigged to your avatar. So what am I saying here? I keep going back to this, like, your avatar is this walking art piece. And the reason why is that when you get to genies ideally in the future, we don't say, hey, create your avatar. We just say, here's your gray blob, go play a bunch of stuff. You start unlocking these traits that define you, right? Your aggression score is this, your kindness score is this. You unlocked most likely to kill a frog. Sometimes a trait will unlock a thing that a developer gives to you. So let's say a developer unlocks a big frog. Like, I'm most likely to kill a frog, AI generated, here's a fucking frog. Okay, so you unlock this frog, and that can auto rig to your avatar. So is a frog gonna go across your back? Is it something that is on your shoulder? Is it something that's on your belt? So your avatar, you don't start by creating your avatar. Your avatar actually becomes a transformer of all the things and the objects and so forth that you start unlocking based on your personality. And so you have less of a decision. You actually decide less on, I'm gonna make my avatar like this, and this. Like, no. If we actually wanted to represent your personality and for it to be a mystery, like imagine if I go up to Josie, she has a fucking frog on her shoulder. She has like a masquerade from like New Orleans. She has like all this crazy shit. You're kind of like, that's not just random stuff. That's actually saying something about like that. All that stuff does technically say something about her based on like the action she's taken and stuff. I don't think it's gonna be one-to-one exactly that. Like people are gonna have to make like a starting block avatar, you have a face and shit like that. But what's cool about things is that they're not just random, but they actually correlate to some type of trait context.
I know what I'm gonna build for genies. It's
It's
gonna
like
be called bedrooms. No, straight up, just build like a bedroom for your character. And you gotta get creative. It's gonna be limited. Can you build that?
What?
You have the infrastructure. That's what I'm gonna do. And you
I
can
wanna do like
invite
a giveaway.
other genies in to visit.
I want to do like a giveaway where you gotta do like a few things and then like once, but you don't reveal what it is. Like people have to like somehow.
There's gonna be so many fucking games here. There's gonna be so many fucking games. I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped. I just want to start shipping shit, and it's fun working with kids because they're just like,
You gotta.
they get it.
You gotta meet the digitals. All my kids, you gotta meet them. You would.
You
get
call
so many downloads.
you call them the digitals?
Yeah, they're known as los digitals.
Your kids?
Los digitales.
Yeah. They're the digitals, bro.
That's so good.
Yeah.
The
Get so many
digitals.
downloads just talking to them because they're so tapped into like, well, unfortunately they play Roblox, but.
Roblox is great, dude. The one, like I said, the one company that's going after some of the same shit as Roblox.
Yeah.
They're great.
But they're the ones that got into chess recently. They're all playing chess now.
Dude, chess is the best fucking thing of all.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
obsessed
like-
with chess.
Dude, like we gotta do like an experience for that too. Cause it's simple. Chess is like.
Chess is hella
As long as
simple.
it feels like you're playing against somebody else, I think it would be way better. Than
The
playing phone.
chess and our ecosystem would be fun as speed chess, and it was done with like dolls instead of the actual pawns and characters and stuff. And yeah, man. I mean, like, what's cool about a dev kit is that you kind of sit there, you're like, here are our 20 favorite games. All right, now you guys go make whatever the fuck you want. And you just tap into the creativity of developers, and as long as the incentive is there, and the incentive comes through either cash or it comes with traction, then you're gonna get a lot of people. I think this is gonna take a minute, but we just have the right team in place to go out. It's a huge fucking vision, though. It's like really very, very ambitious. The fact that every single experience is interoperable is like a very, very ambitious task. But all we do and what you guys will see with that OKR presentation, it's like a really simple, like, here's where the world is moving. Here's what we want to accomplish as a vision. Therefore, this is the product that we're building. It's like super simple. World's moving in a way where avatars are becoming more important. We're going to be more digitally immersed and so forth. 2, our vision is to be able to capture and socialize people within ourselves. I'll be out in 2 seconds.
Okay, well, she's gonna come in here. Well, I can do it from wherever you
I'll just do it in a different room.
want. Okay.
Yeah.
No one's after that, so.
That was great.